So, okay. So, hello everyone. Hi, my name is Vytautas, and I will be hosting today's session until coffee break. And I welcome you all to the second day of the Health for All conference, where today a couple of guest speakers will be presenting their presentations, but most of the part, PhD students will be presenting their thesis. To begin with, I would like to welcome Professor Vaiva Lesauskaitė, the Vice Rector for Research of the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences, to open the session.
Yes, so hello everybody, and dear PhD students, doctoral students, and our guests. It is indeed a great pleasure to welcome you at the 12th our conference. As you know that we have a long-lasting tradition since 2010 to celebrate the World Health Day, which is what declared by WHO. So this is health for everybody, health for every person, and this is, as I can say, a key day of our university. So this the 12th conference is the second in the COVID pandemic situation. And now it is, of course, a great challenge to meet each other and discuss the scientific work you have done. But I am happy that this tradition is going on and with this pandemic situation. So every year, the WHO declares the thematic area to be covered. And today, for the 2021, was declared that it is necessary to build fairer and healthier world, because in this pandemic situation, it revealed all the economic and social problems which are bringing the unequal healthcare for the world. So this is, I think that our research also is bringing this to solve this problem. I think that during this pandemic situation, it occurred a radical change of our research topics. As it was previously, the attention paid mostly to the chronic non-communicable diseases. So currently all are oriented to the acute infectious diseases. It means to COVID situation. And if to look to our PhD students' works, of course, they have done during the PhD studies, which were before this pandemic. So most of them are oriented to these current problems of healthcare, and only some of them are dealing with COVID pandemic situation. I think that next conferences will be involves and more research topics on COVID. So I would like also to tell to PhD students some facts about our PhD student society. Currently, we have 266 PhD students, and we are trying to support as much as possible the research. And for example, during the last year, PhD students participated in presented their research projects, and they were granted more around 170,000 euros. And I think that it was a basis to develop their projects for the future. And only it is pity that only some students, around 10% of those who received these grants, are participating in the conference. And I hope that for the next year, the PhD students' participations will be more numerous. I'm happy that in our conferences are participating also PhD students from other universities. And so I think that, and even in this pandemic situation, our scientific collaboration between PhD students will grow. So I wish you the good discussions and of course a good communication between each other. And I think that presentation of all these topics are interesting, and it will lead to the collaboration between PhD students, between the universities, and between with our colleagues from other countries. So welcome at the conference Health for All.
Well, thank you very much, Professor, for this beautiful opening. And I also agree with you that COVID is everywhere now, and it's all over the news. And I think it's also a good thing that today we will not talk a lot about it. So I think it will be nice. Okay, so that we would stay on track, I will ask then our guest speaker, Professor Olga Ryklikienė, from Nursing and Care Department, to talk about the nurse's role in ensuring patient safety, balancing a shortage of staff with high patients' demand.
Good morning, everybody. I just try to share the screen and make the full view. Yes, everything's set. So first of all, I would like to appreciate the invitation to be this morning with you and share my thoughts and my experience on such a topic. And of course, I have to say that always is a great pleasure to be among young researchers and our PhD students. You are our hope and our future. So we are always happy to share what we have and what we could just show you and discuss with you. In my presentation, I would like to touch a topic of patient safety. And not speaking a lot about COVID-19 situation, I just have to say that no doubt nurses were always visible in the provision of healthcare in each country, but especially during this pandemic situation, nurses, they are frontline healthcare workers. And of course, they have rather difficult situation physically, mentally, but still, they are providing healthcare service, and we appreciate them for this. Of course, patient safety, it's also the issue that should be highlighted always in different situations, but in pandemic situation, especially very much. And the main focus of this presentation is to stimulate your thinking, critical thinking about how to balance the shortage of staff. Will it be nursing staff? Will it be other healthcare professionals with increasing patient demand? So I just very shortly speak about current challenging situation that's related health workforce. To give you some details, traditional thinking about patient safety and new thinking about this topic. The new dimension of patient safety is care rationing or missed care. Also the question about how to balance care conditions and patient safety demand. What is the nurse's role, once again, shortly, and I will end with concluding remarks. So just for the introduction, I think some of the numbers are very well known for you, but if to see to the age structure of Lithuanian population, you can see that now the largest part of men and women, there are around 56, 57, And of course, this part will become older, and in several years, in 5-10 years, we will have the increasing amount of elder population. Also, if to see in 3 groups of age, you can see that the part of those who are over 65 is increasing very, very slightly, but still it's increasing. And it's clear that we will have very soon this increasement more intensive. So that means that the demand of nursing care, it doesn't matter where it will be, at home or in nursing hospitals, it's also increased. And here you can see how many nursing hospitals we have around the country. So you can imagine that demand for nursing care service is really high today, and it will be much higher in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Also, Lithuania is not in the best position, I would say, in relation to nursing home or elderly care beds for per 100,000 populations. There are many countries in this green zone that have a number of those beds rather balanced, and Lithuania still needs more beds for elderly population to be cared at home or in institutions. Also, beside the infrastructure, we should speak about healthcare professionals. In total, we have over 80,000 nurses, more than 21,000, and also we can see the ratio, because the absolute number usually doesn't say a lot, but if you want to compare different countries, you need to see to the rate per 10,000 population or some other number. And we have 5 specializations for nursing care: intensive care nurses, anesthetists, operating theater nurses, community nurses, mental health nurses, and emergency care nurses. Also, we have a little bit less than 1,000 midwives, 8,000 nursing assistants. And if you would like to compare with number of physicians or dentists, you also could see those numbers. So just for you to orient who are taking care of our patients and who are working in healthcare institutions or in public healthcare facilities. And if to see again in the broader view in relation to other EU countries, a number of practicing nurses and midwives in Lithuania, it's almost in the middle. So that means that our ratio, nurses and patient ratio, or nurses and population ratio, is not the best. And of course, if we want to provide safe care, first of all, and quality care, we need more numbers. We need more nurses and more midwives. And you can see the leading countries. And I am sure that you know about healthcare in those countries as well. And also, just for comparison, the number of practicing physicians, you see here Lithuania is in among the 5-6 leading countries, and the number of practicing physicians in Lithuania was one of the highest in EU. Of course, one of the factors that influence the healthcare workforce is immigration. And we have some statistics here about physicians and nurses. So you can see that in 2012, 2019, from in 22 OECD countries, more than 1,000 physicians trained in Lithuania have license for practice and were practicing. You see the most popular destinations for this healthcare staff mobility, and the same with nurses. It's less than 1,000 nurses trained in Lithuania have license for practice or were practicing, most of them in the UK and Norway. And also we have now some good tendencies that number of nurses from Lithuania and Norway have decreased twice. So we don't know what will be the trends during the next years. next decades, but hopefully this emigration stabilized a little bit, and we will be happy to see our students that graduate here in Lithuania. We will see them working here and staying here in Lithuania as well. So that was very shortly, just to show you. I will speak about NESIS and NESIS role in assuring patient safety and minimizing missed care. So this statistic maybe helps you to think about what kind, how large is the population I am speaking about. So everybody knows the term of patient safety, and I'm sure you could describe it in your own words or by the definitions of some famous researchers or politicians. It's really a recognized discipline in contemporary healthcare system. Since the early 1990s, it was acknowledged that healthcare is not always safe. Patients are exposed to high levels of risk in hospitals and other healthcare settings, and nurses are key professionals in advancement of patient safety. So nobody argue about that. And for that time, the first serious consideration was given to the idea that despite the remarkable advances in modern medicine, in health technologies, in implication of IT and different kind of other tools and advancement, hospitals are not actually safe place to be. The discipline of patient safety recognizes that healthcare organizations are complex, dynamic, and ever-changing. And of course, the speed of changes is very high. Usually, we need to adapt to different kinds of situations almost each day. Success with these organizations is dependent on technology and on many different professions working together in a team to achieve goals that could not otherwise be achieved. And in 2000, the Institute of Medicine in the United States suggested that between 44 to 98,000 people were dying annually in hospitals in that country as a result of clinical errors, at least half of which were deemed preventable. Of course, patient safety as a concept is not new to those who are concerned with providing health care. And traditionally, it has been accepted that those who work in healthcare endeavor to provide high quality care and to work in the best interest of the patient at all time. And even looking to those numbers, more recent study by Jones since 2013 has suggested that Institute of Medicine was conservative in its early estimates and asserts that premature patient deaths associated with preventable harm can be estimated at over 400,000 per year. It's really huge numbers. And while in the United States, preventable hospital errors have been identified as a third leading cause of death. So the statistic of Institute of Medicine made clear that errors in healthcare settings occur with alarming frequency. 4%, from 4% to 16% of patients admitted to hospital experience adverse events, sometimes with very serious consequences, and sometimes involving very experienced and competent staff. Of course, nurses who are taking service 24 hours, 7 days per week, they are the closest to the patient bed and recognize more near misses and adverse events than any other group. And they most likely are in position to intercept and correct potential risk or harm to the patients. Also, the patient safety was at the agenda of World Health Organization, and World Health Assembly first recognized the enormous challenge of patient safety. In 2002, resolutions brought the issue of patient safety to a wider audience and encouraged all countries to pay extremely high attention to the previously unacknowledged fact that healthcare is a risky business, because usually we tend to think that if we have healthcare issue, we just need to go to the hospital to fix it, and usually we expect only positive outcomes. But this new thinking and this new reality, a new statistic about that, you can face the same positive outcomes and some risk in hospital for your health. It was really a big revolution. The World Health Organization's World Health Alliance, launched in 2004, for the first time brought together heads of agencies, health policymakers, healthcare professionals, patients groups to advance patient safety goals and recommendations in order to reduce the adverse health and social consequences to unsafe healthcare. Everybody understood that patient safety depends not only on the practice of healthcare professionals, but also on policy decision-making, on economical conditions, on infrastructure issues, on supply, on healthcare workforce. So it's really a complex issue. And in order to solve, or at least to increase the situation, we need to see broadly, not only locally. So contemporary patient safety thinking, it's more advanced. It has moved away from the idea that those who make mistakes in healthcare are incompetent or careless, recognizing the toxic impact of this approach, where mistakes remain hidden and learning from error impossible. Of course, we don't have ideal situation in each healthcare institution in our country or in Europe or in worldwide. Still, this thinking is very vital, and usually when professionals make mistakes, the first idea is to hide it, but not to learn from it. And of course, that's why we are speaking more and more, and we are showing research findings about the reasons, about how those mistakes and adverse events are, that they are not individual, that they are like a sign of the whole system. And usually it's really not, we can't blame the professionals for the mistake. We just need to support them and help them to learn from those mistakes and just to help them to prevent those mistakes. Reasons error theory since 1990 recognizes that errors where staff members interact with patients or equipment are often caused by latent errors far removed from the point of care. So it's a chain. And usually if you have error today, if you just go back and see what was the practice, what was the equipment, what was the competence or knowledge improvement of staff, you will find many, many reasons or preconditions for that error. Human factors thinking and team function are integral facets of modern patient safety, along with transparency around events and subsequent learning. So we just need to decide, do we want to practice safely, or we will practice as we do this, and just if the error appear, we will say sorry. So safe or sorry. Of course, safe practice always is better than to make a mistake and then just to say sorry, because usually to say sorry is not enough. We have many penalties and all economical penalties for patient harm and etc. And also mental burden for professional who made mistake. It's really huge. So patient safety, there are different descriptions of this phenomenon. One of the maybe mostly used, that patient safety is a discipline in the healthcare sector that applies safety science methods towards the goal of achieving trust-free system of healthcare delivery. So it's really evidence-based. And patient safety is also an attribute of healthcare system. It minimizes the incidence and impact of and maximizes recovery from adverse events. Now, WHO description usually repeats some of the key points of patient safety understanding, and says that patient safety aims to prevent and reduce risk, errors, harm that occur to patients during provision of health care. And a cornerstone of the discipline is continuous improvement based on learning from errors and adverse events. Of course, it's better to learn from errors of others, but sometimes we don't have this choice, and The errors happen everywhere in each healthcare institution, but the most important thing is to make some conclusions from that and try not to repeat. So patient safety faces challenges around its meaning and definition, and the term patient safety is used loosely in many contexts as catch-all for healthcare concerns. So sometimes it's complicated, our understanding about patient safety. Healthcare organizations are expected to practice safely, even if the system and conditions are rather complex and changing every day. Work effectively in teams. We speak about teamwork now maybe more than 10 years, but the question is, are we really working in teams? Do we understand what it is a teamwork? And do we have the competence for the teamwork? Be personally and professionally accountable, show leadership on patient safety issues, report adverse events and near misses rather transparently, be truly open about things that go wrong. I think this is the most important issue, what we still have. Healthcare is influenced by socioeconomic conditions and experiences the fluctuation in funding or staff levels, but activity levels remain the same or continue to grow. For comparison, when industries other than healthcare experience funding or staff shortages, scaling down of that industry activity is a realistic opinion. This option is not available in healthcare. We can't stop to provide healthcare service despite the conditions. So then this situation increases risk to patients, staff, and organizations. Then the conditions have changed, but the goal remains the same. So here we have the scale, then staff levels, funding, supply, other conditions, they are decreasing, but care activity is increasing. And especially now in this pandemic situation, we have our normal patients and we have all those patients who need care for COVID infection. So, and usually the resources, they are the same, or even sometimes because of the disease of healthcare professionals that are infected with COVID-19, usually this the conditions even are decreasing, and we have shortage of staff. So a recognition that where healthcare professionals fail to provide the correct intervention for a patient, this error of omission causes harm to the patient in the same way as more direct harmful action is an unique feature of contemporary patient safety thinking. That means that we can make harm not only with some action, but even if we missed some care that is necessary for the patient, we also can cause harm. So missed or rationedness in care is a care which is necessary, but which is not provided due to constrained resources and fear for has been termed an error of omission with the missed nursing care model. I will not speak about this model, but you could find it in the literature, because recently we finished, just last month, we finished the huge European project, Cost Action, and where all EU countries were participating, and 4 years, almost 5 years with the prolongation, we worked on this topic, on this issue in different countries. We have international conference on that. We published a book that is in press now. So all this information is available if you only will be interested, and Google. So missed or rationedness in care is generally examined with patient safety context as adverse patient safety outcomes like falls, medication errors, increased mortality, and those things are related to the missed or rationedness in care. What are the reasons why sometimes nurses are not comply with the prescriptions, or why they sometimes missed regularly requested nursing actions? So first of all, it's nurse staffing levels, when we don't have enough staff, when we have poor leadership in the working places, when the quality of work environment is not good, Then there is interfere with care process and nursing work, shortage of supply and equipment, and sometimes burnout levels for nursing staff. Even sometimes we can have rather good balanced number of staff, but if the mental health is not good of that staff, we can't have effective service. Nursing care can be missed or rationed when resources are unavailable, and also when nurses' knowledge, perceptions, attitudes, professional and personal values are not relevant, along with the leadership and collaborative teamwork. And because all of this stimulate nurses not to adhere to patient safety guidelines. We could have very good regulation on the paper, but this doesn't mean that all healthcare professionals, and including nurses, they will keep and follow those guidelines. Patient safety education can link all these factors together and empower nurses to intervene or give voice to their concerns. And just for your attention, I would like to highlight some of the data that we got from two Lithuanian studies on missed care. One study investigated missed care in relation to teamwork of nursing staff in nursing and supportive treatment hospitals. And we found that 1/3 of patients in hospitals, in those hospitals, is subject to missed nursing care. So it's huge ratio. The most frequently missed or delayed elements of nursing care are ambulation of the patient's education, provision of emotional support to patient and its family, moving and handling of the patient. So you can just think about what kind of health consequences this can cause. If those actions like moving and handling of the patient is not done in time, we can have pressure sores, we can have other complications. The frequency of missed nursing care increases with the lack of material and labor resources, especially if patient condition deteriorates, and trust in team members reduces in effective planning of nursing care and decrease in the frequency of missed nursing care. And another study was done in a university hospital where we expect the highest level of tertiary healthcare service. You can see that those elements of nursing care are almost the same that are missed. Also patient discharge planning. And if you want to have successful healing of the patient after discharge, because usually stay in the hospital is rather short, so we need to plan it. But you can see that for each 4th of the patient, this patient discharge planning is missed. And the reasons are almost the same, like shortage of staff, inappropriate nursing equipment, or shortage of nurse assistants. And also we have some interviews with staff nurses, and we found that maybe one of the most important findings is that missed or delayed nursing care affects nurses emotionally and enhances their feeling of work dissatisfaction. Because nurses, they really feel bad if they know that some of the care during my shift was missed. I didn't have time, I didn't have possibility to walk the patient or to tend it or to educate it or to provide the support. So it's really a big impact on mental health and mental well-being of nurses. And it is difficult to adapt to changes, although it is essential to accept them for professional prestige and growth, for nurses' self-esteem and improvement. And those changes are very, very often in nursing practice. And nurses experience ethical dilemmas while they are not able to provide nursing care and to fulfill their direct professional obligations in a timely manner. So before finishing this presentation, I would like to highlight once again nurses' role in patient safety. World Health Organization estimates that 19.3 million professional nurses work in healthcare globally, accounting more than half of the healthcare professional workforce. So this shows that nurses are in central role for assuring patient safety for our clients. Nurses at the forefront of patient care across all settings, practice in line with professional values and standard, with patient safety as a core value. Of course, nurses are members of interprofessional care team, and rather often they are leaders in those teams. They also affect change, increasing momentum for the patient safety agenda and strengthening of associated best practice in all care settings. What we could do, we just need to provide effective patient safety education that enable empowerment of nurses to fulfill their safety obligations by voicing concerns and intervening where necessary. And somehow we should deal with a global shortage of nurses because it's real in each country, and it's estimated to be 5.9, almost 6 million in 2020 last year. So we almost have the situation now, and even maybe higher, because many of older nurses, they left profession when the pandemic situation started. So really, there is a question, will the nurses be the gatekeeper for patient safety in future? So concluding remarks are that missed or rationed nursing care remains a challenge to contemporary healthcare systems. This challenge sits firmly with the patient safety realm and can be addressed using a patient safety approach. We usually speak about nursing care in the light of patient safety. A global shortage of nurses, poor working conditions resulted in compromises in nursing care delivery process across many countries, not only in Europe, but also worldwide. One manifestation of this is phenomenon of missed or rationed nursing care that I very shortly discussed today, where patients experience less favorable outcomes, including adverse events and increased mortality. And we have plenty of data from United States and other countries that prove this. Minimizing levels of missed nursing care across health systems should be a priority for all those concerned with patient safety. So I hope that this short presentation gives you some thinking about this. Maybe some of the information was already known for you, but maybe other will stimulate you to read more, to search more on that. And also, if you are from other professions than nurses and nursing, I should say that missed care, it's also prevalent in any other healthcare profession. In medicine, in dentistry, in whatever we will mention. So just maybe the elements are different, but this phenomenon is really prevalent, and we just starting to get the evidence on that. So thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much, Professor, for your presentation. And this is a very important topic. But as a moderator, and I'm also an emergency medicine physician, I would like to disagree with you that nurses are the most important in patient safety, because I believe that nurses are the drivers of the whole healthcare system. And if you're a doctor and you're watching our conference and you think that you are the most important, no offense, but you're crazy or you're blind. Because if the nurse is working in the operation theater for 20 years, and I think she could do an appendectomy. So if we would remove doctors, healthcare system would still survive. If we would remove nurses, we're dead, we're doomed. That's it. So the whole care system is standing on your shoulders. Okay, and I can see that we have a question. Good morning, Andrus Pechkaitis is asking. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation of challenges and insights. Do you see any significant role of technology, information technology, robots to assist nurses in their daily work?
Yes, of course. Now we speak more. Now when we know the phenomenon of missed and rationed care, the next step is to find some interventions. And of course, technologies and robotics and all other that was mentioned in the question is very important. But we need to implement this very carefully. We need to prepare nurses and other healthcare staff to work with that. But of course, the literature says that teamwork is the most important in dealing with missed or rationed nursing care, because it seems that we always have the shortage of healthcare professionals. And it seems that we can't prognose the situation in working place during the shift. You know, we have many critical moments, and you can't increase in 1 second the staff number. So if the people are working together in a teamwork, if they are happy to delegate their role to others, and others are happy to accept those roles, so this is the most important and most effective. But I agree, of course, that in future, then we have much more IT technologies in our bed here, I would say, of course, and nurses will be competent and ready to use that. Hopefully, this will be one of the solutions. Yes, I agree.
So thank you very much once again. We're going a little bit over time, so I don't think that we have any more time for questions, but we could talk about this topic for until the evening, I think. So thank you very much once again.
With me. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And I would like to invite for the next presentation, Kristina David from Faculty of Animal Science, and she will be presenting her presentation about the relationship between beta-casein genotypes and the physiochemical composition and sensory characteristics of cow milk. So please.
Good morning. Thank you very much. I am allowed to be here. I am sharing my presentation now for this moment. Yes, I have it here. And again, thank you very much. I'm allowed to be here. Our team and me, we did looked at relations of beta-casein genotypes to chemical composition and sensory traits of cow's milk. Cow's milk, it's considered one of the most nutritious and healthy foods for humans, but not every aspect of cow's milk is understood to the tiny detail. And beta-casein genotypes influence on the digestive system. It is one of them. The difference between I1 and I2 beta-caseins is the amino acid histidine rather than proline at position 67. This issue is related to a peptide called beta-casein 7. And this peptide is released on the digestive system from A1 beta-casein, but not released from I2 beta-casein. Beta-casein 7 is a heptapeptide with opioid characteristics, and also it has strong affinity for mu opioid receptors. When we talk about human milk, goat milk, sheep milk, and so all other species, what has milk like I2, we have A2 milk like, it's only cows who has this other one. And in the right position, it has right amino acid. And A1 beta-casein is relatively new for us, and it can cause some health issues. And this issues is also here on the slide. It's a lot of scientists who work in these issues. I am not a doctor scientist, so I'm just working. I'm looking. We did look at the milk itself, how it looks. So aim of our study was to determine the relation between beta-casein genotypes A1, 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 A2, and A2, A2, and amino acids composition, fatty acids composition, and also milk sensory traits. This slide, you can see methods. We did follow these methods to understand protein, fat, lactose, dry matter, amino acids, fatty acids amount in the milk, as well as pH of the milk. And we looked also at color of the milk and also appearance, taste, and smell of the milk. So I have some results to report for you today. And first one is milk's production traits, influence of different of different genetics on milk production traits, and also some chemical composition in this slide. And we had some differences in lactose. A1 milk was higher in lactose. A1, A2 milk was higher in in protein, and A2 milk was a little bit higher in fat. A2 milk had also higher dry matter amount, and all of the milks was in normal expected acidity. So there was no significant differences in this case, and we should not be influenced. So these things should not be influenced. It did not give any influence on amino acid composition in milk and also fatty acids composition of milk. So first, we are talking a little bit about amino acids in milk. According to our significant data, we are already reporting significant data because it's a lot of data we have, so only significant we have a place and time for. So according to the significant data we collected during our experiment, beta-casein genotype did influence the content of many amino acids and also many essential amino acids in milk, and it also did support our hypothesis that genotypes influence chemical composition of the milk. In our case, A1, A2 milk was decided winner of amino acids content in the milk, and A2 milk had the lowest amount of amino acids in the milk with exclusion of leucine. Next step, we are looking at monounsaturated fatty acids. In this case, A1 milk had the highest amount of monounsaturated fatty acids amount, and A2 milk had the lowest amount of it. Next step is polyunsaturated fatty acids. In this case, A2 milk was a winner. It had the highest amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids in content, and also highest amount on omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids. And A2 milk had the lowest amount of it. When we talk about saturated fatty acids, we have a clear winner in this case from other side, from A1 milk. A1 milk had lowest amount of saturated fatty acids in, and A2 milk had the highest amount of saturated fatty acids. We looked also at the color of the milk, and in our case, A1, A2 milk was statistically lightest and both reddest and yellowest when compared to other genotypes. And we did also some comparison with so-called golden standard of the milk. And in this case, A2 milk, it was closest to it. Color of the milk is important when we talk about milk products, what is made from this milk. And by having naturally color closer to what consumers like to eat, what consumers like to buy, we can spare a lot of coloring, artificial coloring in the milk. So it's in all the cases, especially for ecological milk products, it can be used in this case to make an excellent products. What our consumers would like also to buy and consume. Last thing we did look at, it was sensory evaluation of the milk. And one thing I can say in it, our milk, all the genotypes milk did smell, taste, and looked perfectly. There was not significant difference in this, if I should say my favorite one, so A2 milk for me did taste better, also in the blind study, and also some of the products was better, like butter. It will come in our later studies. We looked at this. We were looking about these products, and for example, butter. It's A2 milk. It's my favorite butter. There is all of it. It did taste perfectly, like milk should taste, but some of the difference can be in different consumers. Like I say, cola can be different, and in butter in our case was cola better some in compared to other genotypes. So up to the conclusion, we did conclude that amino acids content, fatty acids content, and color of the milk could be influenced by CSN2 genotypes A1, 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 A2, and A2, A2. And as a result, if you're using the right breeding programs with favorite genotypes, it could improve quality of dairy products, but it also can actually have influence on healthier dairy products. So thank you very much. This was what I would like to say to you. Is there some questions?
So thank you very much, Kristina, for your presentation and for your hard scientific work. I don't think that I will be able to drink milk anymore normally. I will be always thinking about the genotypes. And if you need the tasters, please write me and I will join your team.
I will really remember that.
Okay.
I hope one time there comes a time when we can find on the shelves A2 milk. And also in Lithuania, it's sold all over the world. So
yeah. Okay.
I hope it will give some usage also in the real life, our research.
Of course, I bet that it will.
Thank you.
So for now, we don't have any more questions. So I would like to thank again Kristina and invite our next speaker.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, thank you. Juozas Grigas from Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, and he will be talking about hepatitis E virus in Lithuania, an overview of prevalence and molecular characterization of local strains in animal and human populations. Oh, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Just a moment, I'm going to share my presentation. Okay, so hopefully that's visible. All right, so my name is Juozas Grigas, and I'm a PhD student here in the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences, and I work at the Laboratory of Immunology and Institute of Microbiology and Virology of the Veterinary Faculty. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about hepatitis E virus, and to be more precise, the prevalence and molecular characterization of locally isolated strains in both animal and human populations. So hepatitis C virus is a specifically genotype 3 is a zoonotic variant of most prevalent and is most prevalent in Europe, contrary to genotype 1 and 2, which are most prevalent in continental Asia and other developing countries, and are responsible for outbreaks of acute hepatitis. Only around 5% of genotype 3 patients develop acute hepatitis symptoms, and most of these patients are immunocompromised individuals. So although hepatitis virus 3 in Europe has been considered a relatively minor pathogen, recent findings that use novel specific ELISA testing methods revealed prevalence rates of up to 8.5 times higher than previously thought in countries like Germany or France. In addition, while traditionally thought as a hepatic pathogen, it has recently been established that hepatitis E virus is capable of extrahepatic manifestations. So nervous tissue manifestation and resulting neurological disorders in particular have been confirmed by numerous papers. And all of these new findings regarding hepatitis E virus show that this particular genotype may be a lot more successful at propagating in a given population than previously thought, having a wide range of host species, being capable of silent transmission without attracting attention by causing very severe symptoms, and also causing a variety of symptoms traditionally not associated with hepatitis E virus infection. So before I started my doctoral work, there was barely any published data regarding hepatitis E virus in Lithuania, and our team has previously published prevalence data from animal population, while most recently I've been focusing on prevalence rate analysis in human cohorts in Lithuania. So our team has selected 3 groups. So that's a healthy control and 2 risk groups of potentially immunosuppressed individuals. So that would be inflammatory bowel disease patient group, and also a solid organ transplant recipient group. So we used ELISA tests for immunoglobulin G and M detection that were previously used for seroprevalence analysis among animals. And in addition to that, we also used molecular diagnostic methods, to be more precise, reverse transcription PCR and primer sets targeting open reading frame 1 and 2 for hepatitis C virus RNA detection. And finally, acquired viral isolates were sequenced and partial ORF2 sequences were acquired. Now, we prepared viral stocks also from the samples of positive individuals for experimental infections. And liver samples were used previously to prepare the viral stock of hepatitis C virus from wild boar, because we had abundance of liver samples, while serum samples were used for hepatitis C virus stock preparation from humans, because we didn't have access to liver samples. And we used 4 cell lines for experimental infection, 3 of them originating from kidney, and 1 of them was of the nervous tissue origin. And all of these cells were cultivated for at least 14 days after infection. And the presence of hepatitis E was confirmed by reverse transcription PCR in order to see if there's any viral progeny present in the supernatant of the cell culture, and also focal microscopy, which was used to see if the internalization of the virus was carried out successfully by the cells. So I'll start with the prevalence data from humans and animals. So as you can see on the figure at the upper left corner, where animal data is presented in blue and human data in red, the prevalence rate of immunoglobulins G is significantly higher compared to human prevalence rate. But there is also a significant difference between prevalence rates of immunosuppressed patient group and healthy control. So both are marked in red. And overall, all this data is unsurprisingly similar to the data from European countries, except for the most recent data acquired in Germany and France using the novel ELISA test that revealed hepatitis C virus prevalence rates among humans are actually more similar to the prevalence rates that we have detected in animal populations. So the numbers at least are quite similar. Now, the inflammatory bowel disease group, which is the farthest left on the picture, was also divided into different subgroups, and one of the subgroup was anti-TNF or anti-tumor necrosis factor treatment group, and also untreated individual group. So, and the data is presented on the figure on the lower right. And so the anti-TNF treatment or anti-tumor necrosis factor treatment is a biological therapy of antibodies that target tumor necrosis factor resulting in a potential immunosuppression of the patient. So interestingly, our data revealed that none of the anti-TNF recipients had immunoglobulins against hepatitis E virus, or at least immunoglobulins G against hepatitis C virus, which suggests that a potential hindering of antibody production against hepatitis E virus by the anti-TNF treatment might be actually in place. And interestingly, this is also complemented by the molecular data as well, because the only patient positive for both open reading frames 1 and 2 belong to the biological therapy group or anti-TNF group. And aside from that, we were also able to isolate the strain present in the human serum sample, that one positive for both open reading frames, and carry out the phylogenetic analysis. And so in the brackets of the enlarged picture, you can see the human-derived and animal-derived strains. So they share a very high genetic similarity of around 90%, and both of them were used for experimental cell infection. That was actually very lucky because we could directly compare them because they were so similar. Now, this high level of genetic similarity also demonstrates that human and animal hepatitis E strains may be very similar, suggesting a cross-species transmission and consumption of animal meat or direct contact with infected animals may be a potential source for human infections. Now, overall, unsurprisingly, human strains fall within 3I subtype of genotype 3, along with previously sequenced hepatitis E virus strains from Lithuanian animals. So most of these strains you can see in the enlarged picture are actually from animals in Lithuania, and they fall very nicely under 3I subtype. So as mentioned before, both animal and human-derived hepatitis E isolates were used for cell line infection. And as you can see on the bottom table, viral stock prepared from wild boar liver was capable of successfully propagating in virtually all of the tested cells. On the other hand, hepatitis E virus derived from human serum sample was only capable of infecting MARC145 cells, which are monkey kidney cells. And so I will elaborate on this point in a moment. I think it's a quite important finding, but before that, I want to jump to confocal microscopy images here. And so in this picture, you can see MARC145 cells infected with human-derived hepatitis E virus. So the viral capsid protein here is stained in green. And the central image is the overlay, while the viral staining on its own is demonstrated on the upper right corner image. And finally, here's a comparison between MARC145 cells infected by wild boar liver-derived hepatitis E virus, as you can see on the left picture. This data was previously reported, and the image here is of regular immunofluorescent microscopy, while on the right there is an image of cells infected by human serum-derived hepatitis E virus. So as you can see, the viral stock prepared from both animal and humans was capable of infecting MARC145 cells. Now, the difference in capacity to infect other cells that I've mentioned before it may be associated with the tissue of origin from which the viral stock was prepared. So liver usually has higher prevalence of non-enveloped hepatitis E virus form, which is the form that eventually exits the organism via feces and is the main infective agent. And it is typically more capable of internalization by infected cells, while serum sample usually contains more quasi-enveloped hepatitis E virus form, which is the form that allows the virus to evade the immune system, since the envelope is composed of hijacked cellular membrane of the host cells. However, this also means that serum-derived hepatitis E virus is internalized less efficiently. So in conclusion, our findings demonstrate that hepatitis E virus is circulating in both Lithuanian animal and human populations with different local genotype 3 strains sharing high level of genetic homology between species, supporting the genotype 3 cross-species transmission route hypothesis. In addition, our findings also reveal the capacity of locally isolated strains to infect cells different from their original host. So I hope that was interesting, and I thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Juozas, very much for your presentation and your work. And I have one serious question. Since you're working with viruses, was it you who created the COVID-19 virus?
No. I hope you believe me.
No, the silence shows up that it was you. But should we, if a serious
Maybe.
question, should we be worried about the hepatitis E virus?
Well, it's certainly not as worrisome as the COVID right now, but we should keep an eye on it because it's a pathogen which is very different from the pathogens that we normally see reports on that cause very serious symptoms. And those are the viruses that are usually recognized as dangerous. Hepatitis E virus is a very silently spreading virus. It has a very wide range of species, so it's very successful at propagating in a given population without causing too much harm to that population. So in this way, the strategy of hepatitis E virus is very efficient, and also it's not as dangerous as, let's say, viruses that are cause a lot more serious symptoms. But we should always keep an eye on it because we know with the COVID situation, it was also the virus that nobody really paid attention too much until one time it just blew up. So all of these viruses that have very wide range of species, zoonotic viruses and viruses that have high prevalence rate without causing many symptoms, we should always keep an eye on them because they are sometimes a ticking bomb.
Okay, so thank you for your answer and for watching our backs. So now I would like to continue our session with Indrė Stankevičienė and her thesis on can dental crisis experience predict the frequency of dry mouth.
Can you hear me?
I think so.
See my slides, yes?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm Indrė Stankevičienė. I'm from Vilnius University. I'm also a PhD student, and today I will reveal our findings that can answer the question, can dental caries experience predict the frequency of dry mouth? Of course, before starting to present our research, it is important to mention what is mouth dryness and why it is so important to discuss. So, mouth dryness is also known as xerostomia, and it is condition when someone feels the dryness of the mouth or any discomfort related to it, like dysphagia. It is also worth to mention that it is quite a common condition because up to 80% of population worldwide suffers from it, and we had no data in Lithuania before about it. And also aging populations tend to suffer from it also more. So this is the topic of your future healthcare. What is more, clinicians and patients who are not directly facing dry mouth are underestimating its impact. But dry mouth is surely associated with poor oral health because people suffering from it experience improved dental decay rates. They are prone to periodontal diseases, oral infections like Candida. They have prosthetic problems like they cannot wear removable dentures, and also they are in constant discomfort. They have halitosis, burning mouth, dysphagia, and it also disturbs their social life. What is more, dry mouth is also associated with general health, and this can be a sign of serious illnesses like Sjogren's syndrome. So detection of dry mouth can detect other serious illnesses. What is more, it also negatively affects nutrition, reduces quality of life, and also is associated with mental health issues like anxiety and depression. So we can say that the biggest problems related to dry mouth is that it is underestimated. So patients having it do not complain before their doctors, and this remains undiagnosed and uncontrolled, leading to further healthcare issues. So another problem is that there is a lack of evidence how routine dental examination could help us to detect dry mouth conditions. So the study of our study aim was to assess the prevalence of dry mouth in Lithuania and also investigate how dental caries experience is related with the frequency of mouth dryness. Here is information about our research. It was a part of National Oral Health Survey. We chose 5 largest Lithuanian cities and also 10 randomly selected smaller locations in each of 10 Lithuanian counties. We invited to participate people from 35 to 74-year-olds, and 1,405 participants agreed to come. The data was collected in local healthcare institutions in each location. You can see Merkinė in this picture. And the data was collected through questionnaires, and we made 4 study groups from that, people who never felt dry mouth and those who suffers from it sometimes, often, and always. Also, we performed clinical examination and counted the DMFS score. It's the experience of carriers, and it shows decayed, missing, and filled tooth surfaces of a person. And the data was collected by me. I was pre-calibrated before investigation, and it took about 2 years to collect the data. So here are the results. So we can see that the prevalence of dry mouth in Lithuania is 23%, and the biggest part of those who are suffering from dry mouth is in the sometimes group. Also, you can see here 2 diagrams that presents data according to gender and age groups. You can clearly see that females suffer from dry mouth significantly more often. And also older people also have more dry mouth. And this is in the line of the worldwide situation. And these differences are the widest in the always group. And here are the dose response effect according median values of DMFS score in dry mouth groups. We found very clear dose response effect, showing that more frequent mouth dryness increases the risk of dental decay. This finding was very important for us as clinicians, because it showed that even those who sometimes suffers from dry mouth has also increased risk for dental decay, and there is no significant difference between often and sometimes group. Also, this finding led us to the idea that medical software automatically assessing the DMFS score from routine dental examination could benefit in detecting dry mouth earlier. So I want to conclude that the prevalence of dry mouth in Lithuania is 23%. Dental carriers experience increased in more frequent dry mouth groups. Therefore, this determinant might be important in the detection of dry mouth. And also, these findings supports the idea that medical software automatically calculating the DMFS score, especially adding associated information like older age, female gender, would benefit in detecting dry mouth conditions. Thank you for your attention, and I would be happy to answer the questions.
Well, thank you very much, Indra, for your presentation and your hard work that you made all around Lithuania.
Yes, I was traveling 2 years.
Wow, okay. That's impressive. For now, there aren't any questions. I just wanted to ask, maybe you can recommend when people should seek attention for their dry mouth. When should I go to a dentist and ask, do I have a dry mouth?
Yes, this is the most important key question, because if you experience dry mouth, you should tell your doctor and he will take care of you. The most important thing is to share your experience with the doctor, not to hide it. So if you feel sometimes, you just tell, I'm feeling it sometimes, and we will search for the why it is happening to you, and we'll control it.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have to be open to our doctors.
Yes,
yeah.
Surely.
So thank you again, Indra, and
Vytautai, we can't hear anything.
Sorry, I was trying to speak with my microphone muted.
I see.
Sorry for that. So next speaker, Ieva Janulaitytė from Pulmonology Department, and she will speak about eosinophils promote differentiation and migration of airway smooth muscle cells in asthma.
Hello, dear colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Loud and clear.
I would like to present my recent findings I got while doing my PhD. So let's begin. Asthma is a chronic inflammatory disease. It can be provoked by food, smoking, animal hair, dust mites, pollution, pollen, or medicine. Asthma is characterized by recurrent episodes of wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and cough. And these symptoms are a result of airway remodeling that is characterized by epithelial dysfunction, goblet cell hyperplasia, basement membrane thickening, epithelial fibrosis, airway smooth muscle cells, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, and migration, as well as inflammation. It was shown that airway smooth muscle cells, that are one of the most important effector cells in asthma, can be differentiated into phenotypes. They can be contractile with increased gene expression of contractile phenotype markers, and synthetic proliferative that is characterized by increased collagen and fibronectin expression, as well as increased proliferation. So why we chose to evaluate contractility and migration, you may ask, and I will answer. It's because the contraction of airway smooth muscle cells results in bronchoconstriction due to hypersensitivity and differentiation that is mainly the cause of the symptoms in asthma. Furthermore, contraction is a must for cell migration. So due to migration, airway smooth muscle cells spread and they proliferate. So they proliferate, they produce extracellular matrix proteins and biologically active mediators such as TGF-beta, for example. And what it may be caused. So what is the cause of these phenotype changes? Eosinophils are the central inflammatory cells that participate in asthma pathogenesis. The antigen gets to the airway and promotes inflammation. The interleukin 4, 5, 13, as well as eotaxin are responsible for eosinophils to mature in bone marrow and then to eosinophils to migrate to the inflammation site. So we wanted to know if the eosinophils may be responsible for the phenotypical changes in asthma. So our aim was to evaluate the eosinophils' effects on airway smooth muscle cells differentiation to the contractile phenotype and migration in asthma. They recruited 38 subjects. We took their blood. Eosinophils was isolated using high-density centrifugation and magnetic separation. Then we did combined cultures with airway smooth muscle cells cell line, not biopsy material, cell line. And we evaluated gene expression, migration, and contractility. So we took 13 allergic asthma patients, 11 severe non-allergic eosinophilic asthma patients, and 14 healthy subjects. The SNEA patients were significantly older compared to the allergic asthma and the healthy subject group. The lung function of a SNEA patient was significantly lower, and the blood eosinophil count was significantly higher compared to the other groups. We evaluated migration using a wound healing assay, and the migration was evaluated 72 hours after co-culture was made. And contractility was evaluated using collagen gel assay. At first, we tried to evaluate at 1, 2, and 3 hours time points after detachment of the gel from the valve. And as the differences at these time points were not significantly different, we decided to perform the maximum contraction measurement after 24 hours. And these are the primers that we use for gene expression analysis. So let's begin with results. We found that contractility of airway smooth muscle cells was significantly higher after intubation with asthmatic eosinophils compared to healthy eosinophils. And SNEA eosinophils significantly increased airway smooth muscle cells contractility compared to allergic asthma eosinophil effect. So the severe asthma compared to the severe asthma eosinophil effect was bigger than allergic asthma effect. Then we wanted to evaluate possible serum effects on every smooth muscle cells contractility and possible combined effects of eosinophils and serum. And what we found that asthmatic serum significantly increased every smooth muscle cells contractility compared with a healthy subject serum effect. However, we did not find significant combined eosinophil and serum effects on every smooth muscle cells contractility in any group. Let's look what we got on migration experiments. We found that asthmatic eosinophils significantly increased the migration of every smooth muscle cells compared to effect of healthy eosinophils. As well, we found that SNEA eosinophils significantly promoted the migration of every smooth muscle cells compared to allergic asthma eosinophils effects. We did a similar serum experiment with migration to evaluate the possible serum effects on migration and possible combined effects of eosinophils and serum. And we found that serum of SNEA patients significantly increased migration of every smooth muscle cells compared to healthy subject serum effects. Then the combined eosinophil and serum effect was significantly higher in allergic asthma and SNEA groups compared to healthy subject effects. Then we evaluated the gene expression of differentiation markers and collagen 1, collagen 5, and fibronectin in every smooth muscle cells, and we found that asthmatic eosinophils significantly increased the expression of the main extracellular matrix proteins and differentiation markers in every smooth muscle cells compared to healthy eosinophils effect. Also, SNEA eosinophils significantly increased the expression of alpha smooth muscle actin, smooth muscle myosin heavy chain, and SM22 in every smooth muscle cells compared to allergic asthma eosinophil effect. What was surprising, we didn't find significant expression differences of collagen 5 in every smooth muscle cells. Maybe not the eosinophils are the cause of the increased expression of collagen 5 in asthma. So to conclude, asthmatic eosinophils increase contractility, migration, and differentiation of every smooth muscle cells. SNEA eosinophil effect of contractility, migration, and gene expression of differentiation markers was more pronounced compared to allergic asthma eosinophils effect. Serum of asthma patients possibly had different composition of every smooth muscle cells with migration promoting and or eosinophils activating factors. We have to check it. That resulted in increased effect of every smooth muscle cells migration. So to conclude, asthmatic eosinophils change every smooth muscle cells activity by increasing their contractility and migration, thus contributing to every remodeling. Our data could provide a better understanding of eosinophils' role in asthma pathogenesis and eosinophil-related changes on every smooth muscle cells behavior to approach more individualized treatment of asthma. I would like to thank my all study group and especially my supervisor, Professor Kęstutis Malakauskas. And these are the fundings that we got. Special thanks to Research Council of Lithuania and Science Foundation of the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Ieva. I don't see any questions, and so I really hope that you will keep up your good work and you will figure out how to control these eosinophils and that the asthma patients their condition would be controlled better.
Yeah.
So thank you again. And I would like to move forward with the next presentation by Agnė Pašvenskaitė from Department of Otolaryngology, and she will talk about associations of interleukin-10 and interleukin-10 serum levels with laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma, carcinogenesis, and impact on survival rates.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hello, I'm Agnia Pushmanskaite. I'm PhD student at the Department of Otorhinolaryngology, and today I would like to share our work about association of interleukin-10 SMPs, interleukin-10 serum levels, and its association with laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma carcinogenesis and impact on survival rate. So to begin with, I would like to say that laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma ranks the second place in the terms of the highest mortality in all respiratory tract malignancies. And despite the fact that we use sophisticated diagnostic tools like video laryngostroboscopy or perform treatment with CO2 laser or classic techniques like total laryngectomy, however, the survival rate of these patients remains still poor. So in order to clarify therapeutic targets and improve survival rate, identification of new specific and prognostic biomarkers of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma is required. So for this study, we have chosen interleukin-10 because it is an immunosuppressive cytokine, which stimulates proliferation and metastasis of tumor cells. Recently, a controversial and interesting role of interleukin-10 was suggested, and it was referred that it can be a significant biomarker, especially for treatment for oncological patients. For our selected SMPs, we already have made analysis in the scientific literature, and we found out that those SMPs are statistically significantly important in lung, thyroid, gastric, cervical, prostate cancer, and oral squamous cell carcinoma carcinogenesis. So the aim of the study was to evaluate the role of all these three selected SMPs and interleukin-10 serum levels on the development of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma, and also to try to analyze associations of the selected SMPs with patient survival rate. So we performed DNA extraction and genotyping and the measurement of interleukin-10 serum concentration levels in the laboratory of ophthalmology. Our case control study was composed of two groups: laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma group, which was composed of 300 histologically verified patients and 533 control group patients. We must to mention and to refer that our both groups did not differ according to the age and sex. Here you can see our demographic characteristics of both groups. Mostly we have first stage and the fourth stage disease of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma, and once again, our both groups did not differ statistically differently. After statistical analysis of genotyping, we didn't identify any statistically significant differences. So for this reason, we tried to analyze the possible genotypic differences to the progress of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma. So for this reason, we tried to distribute those patients in smaller subgroups. We distributed it to the earliest stage of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma group and advanced stage. The early was composed of first and second stages, and the advanced of third and fourth. Also, we divided groups into patients with no metastasis to the neck lymph nodes and with metastasis to the lymph nodes. So after statistical analysis, we found statistically significant differences in the distribution of interleukin-10 AS1800871 and AS1800872 genotypes distribution in advanced subgroup. After binomial logistic regression analysis, a statistically significant difference were also identified in the same selected SMPs. We identified statistically significant differences in codominant and recessive models, also in additive model of interleukin-10 18000871. And also, as well, we identified statistically significant differences in the distribution of interleukin-10 AS1800872 in the codominant, recessive, and additive models. Speaking about metastasis with patients with no metastasis to the lymph nodes and with metastasis to the lymph nodes, we identified statistically significant differences between both groups and compared with control group. So after binomial logistic regression analysis, it was revealed again statistically significant results in the codominant and recessive models of AA genotype distribution of interleukin-10 AS1800871, also in the dominant model and in the additive models. Speaking about interleukin-10 AS1800872, we also identified statistically significant differences in the codominant, recessive, dominant, and additive models. We measured interleukin-10 serum levels in 20 control group patients and in 20 laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma patients. However, we didn't identify any statistically significant differences. You can see our presented data in the figure. We also tried to understand a little bit better the impact of those SNPs on the survival rate. For this reason, we performed a statistical analysis. However, we didn't identify any statistically significant differences between those genotypic distributions of the selected SNPs. The data are also presented in the figures. So to conclude, I would like to say that interleukin-10 selected two SNPs of the three, interleukin-10 AS1800871 and AS1800872, are associated with the development of advanced stages of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma. However, the genotypic distribution of these selected SNPs did not have impact on the survival rate of laryngeal squamous cell carcinoma patients. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Agne. For now, I can see any questions, but now I understand why I can see you working clinical work, because you're probably spending all your time in the laboratory. But I hope that your work will help the laryngeal cancer patients to be treated better. And best of luck for you. And I would like to carry on with
thank you.
Again, otolaryngologist with a thesis from Justas Vaitkus, and he will present us local inflammatory markers correlation with the SNOT-22 scores.
Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me good?
Yes, good.
Okay, so. Can you see the slides?
Yep.
Normally or the presenter view?
Both. I think the presenter view.
Okay, so I'll share differently then. Now it's good?
Yes.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. I'm Justinas Vaitkus. I'm currently working in otorhinolaryngology department in Kaunas Clinics, and I'm also the last year PhD student in Lithuanian University of Health Sciences. So today I'm going to talk about local inflammatory markers correlation with SNOT-22 scores. So for the introduction, chronic sinusitis is a heterogeneous disease and multifactorial disease that really affects the patient's quality of life, actually even more than diabetes or chronic heart diseases. And it's also affecting about 11% of European population and about 14% of American population. Its complex inflammatory process take place in the nasal mucosa during chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis. And that's where the problem appears actually, because all the patients, the phenotype of the patients when we see them, the clinical view, when we examine them is actually the same for all patients, but the difference appears that not all patients treat the same. That means that if you prescribe medicine or we do the surgery, for one patient we can get 10-15 years remission for the disease, and for the other patient we may need to do the surgery after 1 year. Doesn't matter that we prescribe all the possible medication at that time and we do the radical surgery. And that's where the idea about endotyping the disease appeared, not only dividing it by the phenotype that's typical now is chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis and chronic sinusitis without nasal polyposis, but also involve endotypes that are actually based on the biomarkers, other called inflammation markers. And so the problem is today is that there is no single validated biomarker that can reliably determine whether a patient has chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis, without polyposis, acute sinusitis, or no sinus disease at all. And in addition, we lack the data how biomarkers affect quality of life in context of chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis. So our aim was to identify correlation between sinonasal outcome test, other called SNOT-22 questionnaire scores, and biomarker levels. So for the general knowledge, that's the SNOT-22 questionnaire, how it looks like, how we present it to the patients. It's printed on the paper. It was validated in Lithuanian language in 2012. Why we chose this questionnaire? Because it has best internal consistency, comparing with the other quality of life questionnaires that could be chosen for the chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis. So you see this, it consists of 22 questions. All the questions can be answered either from 0 to graded till 5. So 0 means no problem at all. 5, that means it's a huge problem. So we ask patients to mark all the questions. And this questionnaire, covers broad range of health-related problems, not only the physical problems, but functional limitations and emotional questions. So that helps us also divide the actual problem. So if talking about chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis, in addition to the phenotype I was talking before, in these pictures you can see the average, how we see the average patient of chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis. So when we do the endoscopy at the first examination, we see the, here, can you see my mouse? If not, okay, the picture
no, can't see the mouse.
Okay, it's a picture top left. So we see the middle turbinate in the middle, and it's covered around about with the nasal polyps. If we perform the CT scan, we see all the same view. Doesn't matter what the biomarkers are involved in this inflammation, chronic inflammation. So then the problem happens when they start prescribing the medicine. In this case, let's say intranasal steroids. Some people get response during the treatment, others don't. So in most cases, in the end, we end up with a functional endoscopic sinus surgery as a picture and right below. So in this study, we involved 59 patients with proven chronic sinusitis with nasal polyposis who underwent, we performed surgery for them, obviously. And during the surgery, we took the biopsies from the middle turbinate and from the polyp tissue. And we involved 52 control subjects who underwent other rhinologic surgeries and had other surgeries as lacrimal duct surgery, septoplasty, skull-base surgeries, and they had no history of sinonasal disease or recent trauma. So all surgeries took place in our department in the Lithuanian University of Health Sciences Hospital Kaunas Clinics in period from 2017 till 2018. And the diagnosis of chronic sinusitis was made according EPOS 2012. Why 2012? Because at that time the new one was not released yet. Now we have a EPOS 2020. So on the day on the surgery, patients completed the SNOT-22 questionnaire, and we, as I mentioned before, we took biopsies, and the biopsies after the surgery were frozen at -80 degrees until analysis. Nasal biopsies were assessed for the levels of interleukins, I've called before the inflammation markers or biomarkers, for the interleukin 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 13, 17, 21, and 22. And Luminex R multiplex kit was used according to the manufacturer protocol. Exclusion criteria from the study was patients younger than 18 years old, pregnant women, patients with autoimmune disease, patients with diabetes, patients with chronic lung disease such as cystic fibrosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and so on, patients with Wegener's granulomatosis, and we excluded patients if they use systemic or topical steroids at least once in the past 2 weeks before the surgery. So for the results, we got the statistical significant correlation between 3 biomarkers. In this slide, you see the interleukin 12 comparing with SNOT-22 score. So you see that the If the scores go up, it statistically significantly correlates with the concentration of biomarkers we found in the tissue. Same applies for the interleukin-4, and same applies for the interleukin-22. So for the conclusion, elevated concentrations of interleukin-2, 4, and 22 were determined in patient group with higher SNOT22 scores, pointing to more severe clinical symptoms. And thank you for the attention.
No, thank you, Justus, for your work and the presentation. And it's good to see you in this conference. So can the patient do this SNOT22 score at home and send the results to you, and you can change his treatment?
At the moment, actually, we're using SNOT22 scores more to assess how the treatment works. So for the first part, patient fills the questionnaire at the day of the surgery, and then we ask them to fill the questionnaire 2 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year after the surgery. So for the 2 weeks after the surgery, they usually fill it in the outpatient department. And later on, we usually ask them to fill it at home and send us by mail or email, how it suits for them better.
Okay, thank you. And so I would like to continue with a final presentation before a short break by Rūta Inčiūraitė from Academy of Medicine, Digestive Research Institute, and she will be presenting profiling of microRNA in cryptid top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells of patients with active and inactive ulcerative colitis.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to ask if you see a full screen of my slides.
The presenter's view.
Okay, so just a second.
Yep, no, perfect now.
So thank you. Dear moderator, dear colleagues, dear all, good morning everyone. And today I would like to present our work, which is entitled as Profiling of MicroRNAs in Crypt Top and Crypt Bottom Colonic Epithelial Cells of Patients with Active and Inactive Ulcerative Colitis. So to begin with, ulcerative colitis is a chronic relapsing condition defined by the intestinal inflammation. And one of the most common features of ulcerative colitis is the impairment of an intestinal barrier, which is supported primarily by colonic epithelial cells. And considering the importance of the phenotypic diversity of colonic epithelial cells, examining the expression profiles of microRNAs in these epithelial cells is of major importance to identify ulcerative colitis-induced microRNA markers in these cells. So the aim of the study was to determine the changes in expression profiles of microRNA in crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cell populations during active and inactive ulcerative colitis. So figure 3 represents the study design, and briefly, crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells were sorted from biopsies of healthy control individuals, patients with active ulcerative colitis and inactive ulcerative colitis using fluorescence-activated cell sorting technology. And after total RNA extraction, small RNA sequencing libraries were prepared and sequenced using Illumina platform. After that, sequencing data was processed with small RNA-seq pipeline by the Nextflow core to generate a microRNA count table. And finally, differential expression, comparative correlation, microRNA target interactions, as well as gene set enrichment analysis and data visualizations were performed using RStudio software. I would also like to mention that microRNAs with an adjusted p-value of less than 0.05 and an absolute value of log2 fold change higher than 1 were considered to be significantly differentially expressed. So proceeding to the results, 432 unique microRNAs were identified in the samples. And in order to visualize the similarities and differences of patients' microRNA expression profiles, multidimensional scaling analysis was performed using normalized data of microRNA read counts. And as you can see in the figure 4, there are the clusters of active ulcerative colitis, inactive ulcerative colitis, and healthy control individuals based on the microRNA expression profiles. Very similarly, figure 5 demonstrates the clusters of crypt top named CD66A positive and crypt bottom named CD44 positive cell populations based on the microRNA expression profiles as well. And even though sample clusters overlapped very much strongly, as you can see in the pictures, some microRNAs were still found to be differentially expressed between groups. So we performed the comparative analysis of microRNA expression profiles. And first of all, we identified how microRNA expression changes during different states of the disease in the population, in the same population of cells. So the results revealed that, as you can see in the left part of the figure 6, 23 microRNAs were deregulated in crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells during active ulcerative colitis compared to healthy controls. Very similarly, as you can see in the central part of the figure 6, 22 microRNAs were deregulated in crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells during active ulcerative colitis when compared to inactive ulcerative colitis. And finally, as shown in the right part of the figure 6, you can see that 7 microRNAs were differentially expressed in crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells during inactive ulcerative colitis compared to healthy controls. Further results analyzing another population, meaning crypt top colonic epithelial cell population, revealed that, as you can see in the left part of the figure 7, 28 microRNAs were deregulated in crypt top colonic epithelial cells during active ulcerative colitis when compared to control individuals. As you can see in the central part of the figure 7, 9 microRNAs were deregulated in active ulcerative colitis when compared to inactive ulcerative colitis in the crypt top colonic epithelial cell population. And finally, as you can see in the right part of the figure 7, 3 microRNAs were differentially expressed in the same cell population during inactive ulcerative colitis when compared to healthy controls. Additionally, we have also examined if the response of the crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells to the inflammation differs. And the results that are shown in the figure 8 revealed that 5 microRNAs were differentially expressed during active ulcerative colitis, 2 microRNAs during inactive ulcerative colitis, and 11 microRNAs in healthy controls, while comparing the expression profiles of crypt bottom and crypt top colonic epithelial cells. Further, Spearman correlation analysis was performed between the microRNAs expressed in crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells and an endoscopic Mayo score, which reflects the disease activity. And we identified 16 microRNAs that are listed in the table 1, which expression in crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells, and 14 microRNAs that are listed in table 2, which expression in crypt top colonic epithelial cells moderately correlated with an endoscopic Mayo score. And finally, predicted and validated microRNA target interactions were retrieved from databases, and gene target selection for further gene set enrichment analysis was performed by narrowing down strategy. So in short, we used an additional single cell transcriptome sequencing data from GeoDatabase to retrieve the specific lists of genes that are expressed in crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells. And as shown in the figure 9, the gene set enrichment analysis revealed that microRNAs, which are differentially expressed in the crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells during different states of the disease, are involved in such ulcerative colitis-linked processes as signaling by interleukins, SUMOylation, as well as interleukin-4 and interleukin-13 signaling, and many more, by targeting genes that are playing a direct role in the mentioned biological processes and signaling pathways. So to summarize, The changes of expression profiles of microRNAs reveal that crypt top and crypt bottom colonic epithelial cells respond to inflammation differently. The expression of these microRNAs reflects disease activity and modulates the processes of ulcerative colitis pathogenesis. And for the very end, I would like to thank our funders as well as colleagues, and of course you all for your attention. And I think now I'm ready to try answer your questions if you have any. So thank you once again.
Thank you, Ruta. For now, we don't have any questions, and I wasn't a very good moderator, and I didn't manage to keep us on time. So I think that we can conclude this session, and I thank all the presenters for their work. And it was, for me, it was eye-opening, mind-blowing. I have no idea what kind of sophisticated researchers are happening in Lithuanian laboratories. I think it should go public, that all the society would know and see what is happening and what our scientists are doing. So thank you all once again, and for our guest speakers. And now I would like to invite you for a short coffee break, and it will be 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everyone. A warm welcome after such a short coffee break. We will continue on our conference, Health for All 2021. And I would like now to invite our guest speaker. It's Lukas Žemaitis. He is a junior researcher at Institute of Cardiology, Lithuanian University of Health Science. And he will represent one of our greatest topics for today, for our pandemic situation, the year of SARS-CoV pandemic in Lithuania, dynamics of virus genomic variation and transmission. So please, Lukas.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I will try to share my screen. Okay. One moment. Can you see? Can you see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank you for the organizers for this event. And today I will talk about SARS-CoV-2 genomic studies and its mutational dynamics. It's been nearly a year since we started studying this phenomena in Lithuania. So I would like to start with a brief history of pandemic in our country. So on the 26th of February, Lithuanian government declared a state of emergency due to coronavirus. And after 2 days, the first case of SARS-CoV-2 has been detected within a 39-year-old woman reached out for medical care after getting a mild fever. She has returned from Verona, Italy. And 4 days ago, on 10th of March, 2 more cases of COVID-19 were diagnosed for the patients who recently traveled to northern Italy. And 2 days later, the government announced restrictions for social distancing, prohibiting education, culture, sports, and leisure activities and events, including indoors and outdoors. So first case has had a lot of media attention, but however, the patient had a nearly asymptomatic disease. So the first test to detect the virus was done by the PCR that can only detect the immediate presence of a virus, but didn't provide any additional information such as mutations. In the early outbreak of the pandemic, the widespread genomic studies of SARS-CoV-2 virus was not carried out in Lithuania. In the beginning of pandemic, we had only 3 genomic sequencing of the virus. You can see it on left panel. So these samples were sequenced in Germany. Lithuanian University of Health Sciences team decided to apply to the Research Council of Lithuania with a project which aims to sequence first genomes circulating in Lithuania. And in following months, we were able to obtain virus genomic sequence from the patients diagnosed with COVID-19 in Lithuania. So the sequences were uploaded to the international database GISAID. And later during the year, we sequenced more than 250 samples. And because genomic studies started rather late, hence we started to investigate the positively tested samples retrospectively. So we think that this is important when evaluating the dynamics of virus chains. So when we started sequencing SARS-CoV-2 genomes of recently infected patients, we noticed a huge demand of such studies. And in consequence, we had to work day and night and even spend Christmas holidays in the laboratory to perform sequencing. So I would like to briefly describe our epidemiological situation during the first year and now. So you can see the plot here, and here is cases of COVID-19 in Lithuania. So as you can see, we had a huge outbreak in late autumn and winter. So now the total number of positive cases is more than 200,000, and vaccination rate is about 13% now. So we wish that the situation will be better soon. So as I mentioned, sequencing. When we finished our sequencing project in February, large-scale testing was launched in Lithuania at the national level. So it involves 2 largest hospitals in the country, 2 universities, Institute of Veterinary, and using ECDC support for sequencing. So the aim of the national study was the sequencing of SARS-CoV-2 virus genomes from randomly selected positively tested samples across the whole country. So it's good that European Union recommends to reach 5% of sequencing capacity of positive samples, but in the first month of national project, we reached around 15%. So results are quite good. It's good to reach European recommendations when the population is quite small. So large-scale sequencing studies are very important for monitor the dynamics of the virus chains to identify new dangerous variants. But the main limitation of sequencing is prolonged waiting time for the results, that sometimes takes more than weeks or week or 2 weeks to get the results. So in the beginning of February, the first variant of concern case was identified in Lithuania. So I think that everybody know the name British variant, or more scientifically B117 variant. It's known that it's transmitted 40% faster, and because sequencing results have some delay in results at the national level, it's decided to test all positive samples from 2 days of March for this specific B117 variant. So as you can see, results obtained were not encouraging. It became clear that the variant B117 has spread very rapidly, and that on the day of the study was circulating in almost all regions of the country and caused over 50% of COVID-19 cases nationally. So the largest spread of B117 was observed in our capital, Vilnius, and on the right side, you can see the latest results from the capital. As you can see now, this variant has seen very rapid spread, and the number of disease cases per day has doubled every week. So this variant was very quickly became dominant in most regions of Lithuania, and phylogenetic analysis revealed that most of B117 cases were of the same virus origin. So this suggests that the virus spread is more linked due to specific outbreaks, not due to imported cases or due to individual imported cases. And a similar trend was observed over last year, and I would like to talk more about it. So here you can see the virus variants detected during our study in 2020s. So the virus lineages prevailed, two of which originated in Lithuania, and they accounted for more than half of all positive cases. With the onset of a new wave of COVID-19 in late autumn, the Spanish originated variant B177 quickly spread in Europe, most likely because of a high number of tourists in this country. And I would like to talk more about dynamics in next slide. So in this 3D image, it shows the virus lineages, virus variants detecting during the first pandemic year and how the incidence changed over the time. So the majority of the virus variants have been identified only a few times and eventually disappeared. At the very beginning of the pandemic, the B53 virus variant prevailed in country, and this variant was identified as well for the first sequence genomes in Lithuania. And there is no information in the international database GISAID about the presence of this variant in other countries. So this variant is dominated in Lithuania in April and then completely disappeared. In late spring and through the summer, two other Lithuanian virus variants prevailed, and the spread of these variants was associated with outbreaks within the country and not with the altered genetic characteristics of the virus, because only one virus variant of Lithuanian origin has been identified in other countries, and only in few isolated cases, not spread widely. So in late autumn, when the number of COVID-19 cases began to grow rapidly, Lithuanian virus variants were supplanted by the Spanish variant, which at that time dominated in Europe until the emergence of B117 British variant and its subsequent rapid spread. Although B177 has been introduced to Lithuania many times, from the profile of hereditary mutations, we can argue that the vast majority of currently circulating cases caused by B177 variant come from the one widespread imported cases observed spread in the Lithuanian version of B177. So this variant is identified in other countries such as Latvia, UK, Denmark, Norway, Ireland, Croatia, and some other countries. So in Lithuania, we had 4 outbreaks in mink farms. Two of them had happened in late of autumn, if I can remember correctly. It was November. So when the minks in Lithuania were infected, we sequenced their SARS-CoV-2 genomes too. So we investigated 9 samples from 2 farms. In both farms, minks were infected with different variants of the virus. Unfortunately, we were unable to obtain samples from the farm employees to determine how minks got infected. But mutation analysis revealed that many variants can be detected in human samples. However, the mink infection is more associated with two mutations, and these variants are very rarely detected in human samples, not only in Lithuania but worldwide too. And Now we had 2 recent outbreaks in mink farms, and sequencing of these samples are initiated, but results are not available yet. So to summarize my speech, I would like to say that majority of the cases were associated with outbreaks during which one variant of an imported or locally sourced virus has spread. Therefore, it is important not only to monitor the dynamics of virus change, but also to control the hospitals of hotspots of COVID-19 as soon as possible. Sequencing studies are necessary to combat the pandemic, and they provide additional information on the origin of the infection and help to evaluate the effectiveness of diagnostic tools, vaccines, and as well predict outbreaks. And sequencing studies are also very important for the epidemiological control for contacts tracing, and I believe not only for COVID-19 infection, but other infectious diseases too. So regarding our research directions, so we started sequencing by using Illumina sequencing platforms, but decided to move to cheaper technology called Oxford Nanopore. So we are working to improve methodology to make these tests as much as possible cheap and results as much as possible fast. So we're working on this methodology as well. For sequencing itself cannot provide a lot of information about the virus, about it provides information about the virus itself, but cannot say anything about the association with a disease or some clinical characteristics. So it's very important to collect as much as possible metadata about the patients, about the status of the patients. And with advent of mass vaccinations and the emergence of more and more variants of virus, functional testing of a virus in cell cultures has become very important. And but such testing has big limitations because of very high requirements for biosafety in laboratories. So that's it from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
So thank you very much, Lucas, for this presentation, and it's a great job for this our science, and your team is pioneering in Lithuania. And we have one question from the audience, so if you could answer quickly. Vytautas asking, Lucas, I have heard that there is a Lithuanian variant. How your variant is better than compared to others? We surely want to be the best.
Yeah, Lithuanian variant is maybe it's better than British one because it's not spread so fast. Yeah, but it's not good for our country. It's not good to know that during this pandemic, almost all Lithuanian variants are dominating, because it means that control of the disease is quite not good enough because we had huge numbers from single samples. So, yeah. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, and we will wait for the others your research. And thank you. So next presenter, it will be Vytautas Aukštakalnis, and let's see what was the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown on trauma team patient in a single major Lithuanian trauma center. So please, Vytautas, we want to hear your presentation. Vytautai, please unmute your microphone.
Sorry, I thought that you're reading my lips. I will fix that problem now. So I said that I want to begin with by telling you, discussing it, if this is a problem, the trauma patients and trauma in Lithuania, is it a problem? And a couple of years ago, trauma was between top 10 leading causes of death in the world. But in 2019, the World Health Organization removed it from the list. And in the countries which has high and middle income countries, trauma is no longer on the list. However, in Lithuania, it is a third leading cause of death in men, the external cause of death that includes trauma, suicides, and poisoning, and the fifth leading cause of death in women. Also, as you probably know, that Lithuania is leading in a suicide section between European countries. And also, we are on the top 4 countries that has the highest mortality rates due to transport accidents. So I think that this is important, and it's an interesting field to research. However, up until 2018, we didn't have any trauma registries. We didn't really know what is happening in our hospital. But now we have a trauma registry, and I want to talk about what is the impact of COVID situation on our patients. So we would be on the same page. I want to quickly go through the whole trauma system and how it works. So when something interesting happens, EMS is being called. EMS arrives to the scene where the accident happened. They evaluate the patient, and they have an opportunity to decide if they want to send some information to our emergency department or they don't. They can contact their dispatcher, and dispatcher contacts our emergency department via the radio call. We have a two-way radio call. If we have a call, we can ask questions about the patient. And when we get this information, then we decide either we activate trauma team or we can wait and see how the patient looks like. So in our emergency department, we have 2 levels of trauma team. We have red and yellow. So yellow is activated based on the mechanism of injury, but the patient vital signs are stable. And the red team is activated when the patient vital signs are unstable, or he was shot, stabbed, or suffered an explosion. And the differences between yellow and red is what kind of specialists arrive in the shock room. So if there's a yellow activation, we have a emergency medicine physician or intensive care doctor leading the team, and we have other specialties residents. And if we have a red team activation, then we have all the attendings and or the consultants, whatever you name them. So what we did was a retrospective analysis of prospectively collected the data. And as Lukas talked about the quarantine periods in Lithuania, basically there were two times when Lithuania was on full lockdown, when the government suggested to stay at home. The movement was restricted, all the shops were closed. And these 2 periods, during these 2 periods, the patient's data didn't differ. So we just put them all together. It consists about 3.5 months of intervention group, and the control group is a year before the pandemic. And our emergency department sees about 63,000 visits a year, of whom about 15,000 are 15,000 are traumas. And during the lockdown, we had about 25% reduction in overall trauma and about 10% reduction in severely injured patients. And patients. And this is not something spectacular to find because of all of the restrictions. So everyone's try to stay home, and the same results are all over the world. But the interesting findings was that the EMS, for EMS, it took about 5 minutes longer to get the patients to our emergency department. On the one hand, 5 minutes is not a long time. But on the other hand, if the patient was stabbed in the chest and he has a pericardial tamponade, he may die during these 5 minutes. But probably the time is longer because we have to use all the personal protective equipment. And if you tried using full equipment with eye protection that is all constantly fogging, 2-layered gloves, it's very hard to feel a vein or anything to do with them. And the suit is limiting the movement of provider. So that's the reasons this time could be longer. Another thing was that in our emergency department, the time to the CT scan was longer when compared to a year before. It's not an easy thing to explain, and we are still working on that. It is also could be due to personal protective equipment, but other issues such as we're doing more full scan CTs, and it takes a longer time to perform the scan. Also, we are seeing more stroke patients because now all the stroke patients has to come to the university hospital. So it's hard to say now, but it is longer to do a CT scan for a trauma patient. Another thing was important thing was that despite that we had less patients, but they were more severely injured, and injury severity score was higher during lockdown. And more patients went straight to the operation theater. However, we managed to keep the high standards of care, and the length of stay in the ICU or overall length of stay did not differ significantly. Mortality also didn't differ. So it's a good thing. And when we compare the type of injury, mechanism of injury, or intention of injury, there were no statistical significant differences. However, it could be due to small sample size. Because if you would look, oh, sorry, I forgot to change the slide. But if you would look to the right, where there's penetrating injury, you can see that we have a more penetrating injuries, and there were more motor vehicle collisions when compared to control group. And when we looked into other countries' researchers, they are very different. In some places of the United States, they had more stab wounds and shootings. In Australia, there were no statistical significant differences. And in Japan, they also had more severely injured patients. But in most countries, there were decreasing trauma patients, and they saw less severe patients. So it's a little bit different in Lithuania, that we have more severely injured patients, and more patients went straight to the operation theater. It probably could be because I think that Lithuanians relaxed a little bit. They saw that there are less traffic when they are driving, and there's less police officers to control them. And we saw it on the news that there were people driving 140 kilometers per hour through the city. And so my message to you would be, especially to Linas Darginavičius, my director of the emergency department, because he's driving like crazy. If you don't want to end up in my registry, please keep your eyes on the road and both hands on the wheel, on the steering wheel, and follow the speed limits. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Vytautas. It was very interesting to hear what is the situation for the safety in the roads or somewhere else. So no questions for now. So I just want to say from your presentation that what we see that the severely injured patients, they do not disappear during this COVID pandemic, and stable and well-trained hospital resources are needed to treat these patients. So maybe you have some plan or some topics for what kind of training missing staff, briefly.
Briefly, as you saw from my research, that we don't have a lot of severely injured patients. So it shows that we have to work even harder on simulation. Because we cannot train on real patients. We have to work more and more on simulation. For now, we are trying to create a system of non-technical skills training. So it will be a hard work, but we are really looking forward to it because it's our job to provide the best care for our patients.
So thank you very much. Now I would like to represent our guest from Medical University of Lublin, Joanna Sidenko, and her topic will be peripheral blood inflammatory NCDs in women with polycystic ovary syndrome, a preliminary study. So please, Joanna, we would like to hear your findings.
Good morning. My name is Joanna Szydełko, and I represent the Department of Endocrinology, Diabetology, and Metabolic Diseases at the Medical University of Lublin. Today, I would like to present you our research study, our preliminary study concerning peripheral blood inflammatory indices in women with polycystic ovary syndrome. Polycystic ovary syndrome, also known as Stein-Leventhal syndrome, is a common endocrine disorder that occurs in about 6 to even 15% of women of reproductive age. What is interesting but not widely known, approximately 50% of women with PCOS are going undiagnosed. PCOS has significant and various clinical implications. It is the most common cause of woman infertility. Moreover, obesity, especially abdominal obesity, is an independent factor aggravating PCOS endocrine abnormalities, as subcutaneous abdominal adipose tissue and the liver tissues contribute to extragonadal aromatization. It is estimated that about 10 to 37% of PCOS women are overweight, and 61 to 76% of them suffer from obesity. Moreover, PCOS is a major risk factor for developing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Individuals with PCOS are also considered to be at high risk for obstetrical complications, endometrial carcinoma, and are characterized by greater risk of early cardiovascular mortality and morbidity. PCOS is a complex condition with mechanisms likely to involve the interaction between genetics and lifestyle. The proposed pathophysiology of polycystic ovary syndrome is a synergic relationship between perturbated gonadotropin-releasing hormone pulsality and hyperandrogenism, probably accompanied by hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, and inflammation. In recent years, it has become apparent that polycystic ovary syndrome is strongly associated with chronic low-grade systemic inflammation. Some authors suggested that neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio and platelet to lymphocyte ratio values, which are proposed as novel inflammatory markers, are statistically higher in PCOS women than in controls. Moreover, a platelet to lymphocyte ratio significantly correlated to progesterone concentration, as well as neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio is positively correlated to free testosterone and androstenedione concentrations, but negatively to folliculotropin hormone concentrations and sex-binding hormone globulin hormone value. The research from 2016 revealed that also neutrophil and basophil count and mean platelet value may be indicators of inflammation in polycystic ovary syndrome. However, Alabardi et al. Indicate that none of complete blood count derived parameters may be useful tool in prediction of inflammation in polycystic ovary syndrome. Due to the limited data and the lack of consensus in the available literature, we decided to investigate this issue, and to the best of our knowledge, the first clinical observation in Polish population. The aim of our study was to compare selected hematological parameters between women with PCOS and controls, as well as attempt to investigate the relationship between morphology parameters and selected hormonal and metabolic indices. Therefore, the retrospective analysis of medical history of patients hospitalized in our department in the period from January 2020 to December 2020 was performed. The diagnosis of PCOS was based on Rotterdam when two of the three following criteria was present: menstrual disorders in the form of oligomenorrhea or anovulation, clinical or biochemical signs of hyperandrogenism, and polycystic ovaries image on the transvaginal ultrasonography. Patients with acute or chronic infection, hematological or thyroid disorders, premature ovarian failure, endometriosis, diabetes mellitus, or pregnancy were excluded from the study. The typical clinical features of polycystic ovary syndromes, such as signs of hirsutism, menstrual disorders, polycystic ovaries on transvaginal ultrasonography, acne, or androgenic alopecia were precisely evaluated. Moreover, the complete blood count derived parameters, NLR, MLR, and PLR, have been calculated in all patients by dividing the absolute neutrophil, monocyte, and platelet counts by absolute lymphocyte counts. The study group consisted of 50 women with PCOS between 18 and 28 years with the mean age amounting 24 years, while the control one consisted of 25 healthy volunteers, age-matched healthy women. The mean BMI was significantly different between these two groups, with the p-value below 0.001. The mean value of one of insulin resistance indices, homeostatic model assessment for insulin resistance, was about 3.07. Taking into consideration the prevalence of symptoms reported by a polycystic ovary syndrome woman, the most common were menstrual disorders, and that occurred in about 88% of them, polycystic ovaries on ultrasonography in about 80% of women, and hirsutism in 68%, with a mean 88.7 points in the Ferryman-Galloway scale. Acne and androgenic alopecia have been observed less frequently because only in 26% and 12% of patients. Regarding hematological parameters, it has been observed that neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, monocyte to lymphocyte ratio, and platelet to lymphocyte ratio values, as well as neutrophil counts, were significantly higher in PCOS women than compared to controls, whereas lymphocyte counts were lower, what was presented in this table. According to this diagram, most of polycystic ovary syndrome women had weight disturbances. 8 of them were overweight and 28 obese. Only 14 patients were lean. In the control groups, 17 had normal weight, 6 were overweight, and 2 obese. In the next step of our study, we divided patients from the study and control group into those with normal body weight and obese patients, due to the fact that changes in metabolism appear already in overweight patients. However, there were no statistically significant differences in case of NLR, the MLR, and PLR values in obese and non-obese patients with polycystic ovary syndrome. Only white blood cells count and neutrophil counts were statistically significantly higher in obese PCOS women than in lean ones. The positive correlation between HOMA-IR and white blood cells, neutrophil and lymphocyte counts were noted. Nevertheless, there were no correlation between BMI and analyzed parameters, which may be caused by the fact that BMI doesn't fully reflect the advancement of metabolic changes. Moreover, we assess the relationship between hormonal status reflected by folliculotropin, hormone lutotropin, estrogens, pre-testosterone, and dehydroepiandrosterone sulfate, androstenedione concentration, sex hormone binding globulin value, and complete blood count derived parameters. The significant negative correlation was observed in the case of folliculotropin concentration and white blood cells. Moreover, the significant positive correlation was observed in case of dehydroepiandrosterone sulfate and neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio and monocyte to lymphocyte ratio values. And surprisingly, the significant negative correlation was observed in case of androstenedione and platelet value. Summing up, the findings of our study reveal that polycystic ovary syndrome is associated with increased activity of inflammatory process. Neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio, monocyte to lymphocyte ratio, and platelet to lymphocyte ratio values may be a novel indices of the severity of inflammation. Moreover, our study confirmed the hypothesis that polycystic ovary syndrome is a chronic inflammatory process independent of obesity. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for your interesting topic. And it is very important about this woman's health. And we don't have any question. And just what would be your next steps for these findings on your?
Yes, our department. Actually, in our department, we perform retrospective analysis of complete blood count derived parameters as inexpensive and widely accessible parameters in different endocrine disorders. We have published recently our research work in the case of Graves-Basedov disease and Graves' orbitopathy, and now we would like to check if these parameters also may be used in polycystic ovary syndrome. And then the next step will be to compare neutrophil to lymphocyte ratio values in different endocrine disorders to assess if they may be used in clinical practice. Moreover, we also want to analyze more patients with polycystic ovary syndrome, and we would like to divide these patients according to four phenotypes of polycystic ovary, according to four phenotypes of polycystic ovary syndrome. In the case of this retrospective analysis, it's a preliminary study hours. Therefore, we don't share this patient in such groups, but we would like to perform both retrospective and prospective analysis of patients with polycystic ovary syndrome, and also check another inflammatory markers such as interleukin-6, CRP, or sedimentation rate.
Okay, thank you very much, and good luck in your research study. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And now we would like to welcome Kristijonas Jasaitis. He is from Lithuanian University of Health Science, and his topic will be transaxillary gases, endoscopic hemithyroidectomy versus conventional open hemithyroidectomy, early single center experience. So please, Kristijonas.
Hello, I'm Kristijonas Jasaitis from Kaunas Clinic Surgery Department. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I will present first experience of endoscopic thyroid gland surgery in Kaunas clinics. Conventional open thyroidectomy is defined as a gold standard in thyroid gland diseases treatment. Also, progressive surgery methods as endoscopic and robotic technique provides a better structural visualization and cosmetical effect. So what is that endoscopic thyroidectomy? During this procedure, 5 centimeters incision in axilla is made, and special instruments, same as in laparoscopic abdominal surgery with endoscope, are used for 1 lobe of thyroid gland removal. This procedure was described in 1996, but it gets more and more popular in the last decade. Endoscopic hemithyroidectomy in our center was started 4 years ago. Most data of endoscopic and robotic thyroid gland surgery are from Asia and North America. Meanwhile, in Europe, other techniques of thyroid gland surgery are used. Our study aim was to compare conventional and endoscopic hemithyroidectomy between European population and define the learning curve for transaxillary endoscopic gasless hemithyroidectomy. We analyzed 220 cases of conventional and endoscopic hemithyroidectomies retrospectively, which has been performed in Kaunas clinics between 2017 and 2019. Patients' demographic data, hospital stay, surgery results such as surgery time, vein placement, and drainage duration, complications, and histological examination details were compared. Also, surgeon learning curve analysis using cumulative sum analysis for duration of the surgery was made. One of endoscopic thyroid gland surgery advantage is scar in non-visible area. Demographic data in our study and previous reports demonstrates that younger patients prefer endoscopic surgery, especially females, due to excellent cosmetic effects. Endoscopic thyroidectomy shows advantage of a shorter hospital stay compared to open group. Shorter hospital stay in the endoscopic group may be associated with shorter drainage duration and lower pain level after endoscopic procedure in our series. The mean operative time of endoscopic hemithyroidectomy is more than 10 minutes longer compared to open group. During endoscopic hemithyroidectomy, the plane of dissection starts from the axilla and extends to the chest wall and neck. It results in more time consumption because of much larger dissection plane is needed than in conventional hemithyroidectomy. Significantly different thyroid gland volume between endoscopic and open groups is influenced because of patient inclusion criteria, what is noted up to 6 centimeters for endoscopic hemithyroidectomy surgery. Analysis of complication doesn't find statistical difference between endoscopic and open groups, although tendency to better results after endoscopic surgery could be perceived. There was no incidental parathyroidectomy in endoscopic group, while 5 cases of parathyroid gland removal in the open group stated. In our opinion, it may be a result of better visualization and lateral access during endoscopic surgery. Wide subcutaneous dissection from axilla to neck, splitting the sternocleidomastoid muscle, has introduced potential new adverse events after endoscopic surgery, such as chest paresthesia and sternocleidomastoid muscle stiffness. Meanwhile, these symptoms are uncommon after conventional thyroid surgery. And recurrent laryngeal nerve injury after vocal fold and vocal cord paresis is major complication after thyroid gland surgery. Difference between endoscopic and open groups were not significant, so potentially better visualization during endoscopic surgery doesn't reduce recurrent laryngeal nerve injury rate significantly. Also, we evaluated surgeon learning curve of endoscopic hemithyroidectomy, dividing patients in 6 groups, starting from first 10 to the last 10 cases. In first 10 cases, endoscopic mean surgery time was over 110 minutes, and second 10 mean surgery time decreased to 71 minutes. and it is significantly shortened and below overall average. And shortest endoscopic surgery time reached between 41 and 50 cases. In addition, surgeon learning curve analysis using cumulative sum was made for duration of surgery. The CUSUM test shows when surgeon achieved shortest surgery time and improved surgical technique. CUSUM surgery time analysis shows surgery time peak reached after 30 cases when surgeon mastered endoscopic technique, and TENS axillary hemithyroidectomy learning curve become short enough if surgery performed by high volume thyroid surgeon with endoscopic or laparoscopic skills. So in conclusions, transaxillary hemithyroidectomy is obviously superior to open technique according to better cosmetical effect in neck area, shorter hospital stay and low rate of accidental parathyroid gland removal could be another advantage of endoscopic method, and transaxillary surgery time is significantly longer than open hemithyroidectomy because of technically more complex procedure, and endoscopic surgery has limitations for large volume thyroid glands and total thyroidectomy. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Kristijonas, and it was a great presentation from the science perspective and from the management perspective. What I see, one of your findings, it's shorter hospital stay comparing to the others. So the shorter hospital stay, it is one of the financial benefits of the hospital, and it's an important factor of the healthcare quality. So thank you very much. So we can see that there is a lot of benefits, and we don't have any questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we have another presentation, and it's from Riga. Hello, Mara. Mara Kilbus, it's from Riga Strandish University, Paul Strandins Klinikum University Hospital. And her topic is the use of neuromuscular blocking agents for tracheostomy placement. So please, the stage is yours, Mara.
Thank you. And yes, my name is Mara Klibus, and I would like to thank you for this opportunity to participate in your conference. And I would like to introduce you to our study about the use of neuromuscular blocking agents for tracheostomy placement. Open surgical tracheostomy is a common invasive procedure in the intensive care unit, and in the literature there is 2 to 11% of ICU patients who require mechanical ventilation will receive tracheostomy. Surgical tracheostomy requires anesthesia and analgesia, but there is little and controversial information about neuromuscular blocking agents' effect. There is guidelines for percutaneous dilatation tracheostomy in the intensive care unit, and these guidelines suggest that anesthesia should consist of intravenous general anesthesia and neuromuscular blockade. But this recommendation is weak because it's based on clinical practice, because there is not enough clinical studies. Neuromuscular blockade paralyzes throat muscles and reduces cough reflex. And in the guidelines of use of tracheostomy during the COVID-19 pandemic, suggest use neuromuscular blockers for the procedure to minimize cough and virus spreading. And perform open surgical tracheostomy at the bedside may be preferred to avoid virus spreading in the hospital. One of the most common reasons for avoiding use of paralytic agents is respiratory depression. which can result in difficult airway maintenance and hypoxia during failed tracheostomy placement. So our study aim was to assess the use of neuromuscular blocking agents in critically ill patients following tracheostomy and the incidence of early complications, hemodynamic instability time, and anesthetic agents consumption. This is single-center randomized prospective study at Paul Strudinch Clinical University Hospital in the General Intensive Care Unit. We included 43 critically ill patients who were intubated and scheduled for open surgical tracheostomy. Patients were randomly assigned into one of the two groups. With neuromuscular blocking agents, in this group, patients received combination of sedative and analgesic agents and neuromuscular blocking agents. For neuromuscular blockade, we use atracurium, and the second group was without neuromuscular blocking agents. And in this group, patients received a combination of sedative and analgesic agents. In both groups, patients received local infiltration with lidocaine before surgical incision. We collected and statistically analyzed demographic data, total consumption of sedative and analgesic agents, hemodynamic instability time, catecholamine agents consumption, and surgeon's assessment about the surgery. Here you can see our results, and as you can see that the demographic data between groups are similar, and there are no statistically significant differences between groups. The choice of induction drug is important to minimizing occurrence of hypotension, which is very important in the critically ill patients. And in our study, propofol was the most commonly used induction drug. And the patient who did not receive neuromuscular blocking agent showed higher consumption of propofol for sedation than patients who received neuromuscular blocking agents. Hemodynamic instability time was mainly corrected by adding or increasing the dose of catecholamines. There is no statistically significant differences, but as you can see from this graphic, the tendency of higher hemodynamic instability time and higher catecholamine consumption is in the group without neuromuscular blocking agents. Here you can see complications during the surgery, and patients who did not receive neuromuscular blocking agents were more likely to develop coughing, which is an essential aspect, for example, patient with COVID-19 pneumonia to prevent virus spreading. Also, it is important in patients with head trauma. Also, this graphic shows that there is no statistically significant differences in bleeding complication, but as you can see, the 3 times more often major bleeding is in the group without neuromuscular blocking agents. Also, the saturation is higher in the group without neuromuscular blocking agents. To evaluate surgeon assessment about the surgery, after the procedure, we asked otorhinolaryngologists to evaluate the tracheostomy placement from 0 to 10, where 0 was it was very hard placement, and 10 is very easy. And as you can see, there is no statistically significant differences between groups. So our conclusion is that neuromuscular blocking agents reduces coughing response during open surgical tracheostomy, and the neuromuscular blocking agents reduces needs for sedative agents, but because of small amount of patients who were hemodynamically unstable, there is no statistically significant differences between groups in hemodynamic instability time and catecholamine consumption. So yeah, thank you for your attention. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Mara, for your findings. And what we see, the patient safety, it is a very important aspect. And what is your opinion about this safety?
I think as I understand, your question is, do we need to use neuromuscular blocking agents or we don't? My opinion is that we need to use the neuromuscular blocking agents because yes, there are risks that about this respiratory depression, but in guidelines about difficult airway management, they also say that you should use neuromuscular blocking agents, and the intubation or will be easier. So my opinion is that you should use. I can hear you. Yes.
Thank you very much. Good luck and greetings from Lithuania.
Greetings from Latvia.
And our next presentation, let's come back to Lithuania, and it will be Aida Mankutė, and we will hear about novel hybrid learning methods, improved acquisition of the endotracheal intubation skills as compared to classic simulation-based trainings. So we would like to hear the difference. Please,
Hello,
Aida.
everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Aida. I'm doctor anesthesiologist and intensive care. My working field is education and emergency medicine. So I want to try to show my slides. Today, I'd like to introduce new hybrid learning method and randomized controlled study. The science of education is looking for novel ways to improve the learning process. In medical studies, teaching students practical skills that can be readily and safely applied in clinical practice is one of the major goals. Study shows that e-learning is effective, but simulation-based training is an established important tool in medical education, facilitating acquisition of necessary competencies and has been reported to be more effective to problem-oriented learning. But there are some disadvantages. Acquiring robust skills that can be applied in clinical practice requires multiple repetitions in a simulation environment, which costs a lot of time and teaching resources. New training solution was developed in 2013. It allows to drill practical skills in emergency medicine independently. Hybrid Lab is peer-to-peer simulation training system accessible 24/7. In space industry, we met Dragon Algorithmic Language, a tool to solve problems systematically. It's called Dragon Algorithmic Language, a common tool in IT, but not common used in medicine. A hybrid lab combines algorithms, e-learning, hands-on simulation practice, peer-to-peer learning, supervision, and feedback by remote instructor. Most effective learning methods for skills retention is group discussion, practice, and teaching others. Hybrid learning has all these elements. How it works? Firstly, students get theoretical knowledge by themselves in flipped class, then come to SimCenter for practice. This hybrid system makes it possible for students to have unlimited access to simulation training and practice, regardless of ability of technicians and instructors. The solutions is more hands-on practice time for students, much higher skills retention, and better performance in real medical situations. With algorithm language, easy standardize all processes and skills in medicine. This makes it easy to learn for students and medical professionals. Each column indicates different stages of the process. Algorithms can very effectively describe the practical skills and train them till automaticity. Studies with hybrid lab learning method shows that hybrid training methodology can increase students' self-confidence acquisition and retention of practical skills. A hybrid learning method is novel with a few published studies and no one in intubation skills. Aim of our study is to compare hybrid learning method with classical simulation-based training for teaching intubation skills. This was randomized experimental design with 78 medical students in the 5th year course in anesthesia module and 22 first-year residents of emergency medicine and anesthesiology. Randomization was performed before teaching. The subjects were randomly divided in two groups, a conventional simulation-based learning group and the hybrid learning group. Excluded subjects who declined to participate and who had previous similar practical skills training or experience. Also subjects who started the training but did not complete. The conventional simulation-based training group teaching process consisted of lectures and practical skills with hands-on training sessions. During the simulation-based training sessions, the correct procedure of intubation was demonstrated by the teacher on mannequin and followed by participants performing the intubation on mannequin under the supervision of the teacher. The hybrid group studied theoretical material, lectures, videos, and algorithms in virtual learning environment. The students continued with the practical skills training only after solving the online test containing 10 questions. After individual theoretical preparation, the subjects organized themselves in the groups of 3 for peer-to-peer practical skills training sessions in a hybrid lab. They have 24/7 access to lab and do not need to coordinate the timing with a technician or instructor. The pre-planned estimated duration of the skills training was 6 hours for each group. This group was supplemented with handheld tablets containing the education software, scenarios, checklists for clinical situation assessment and feedback. Training sessions were recorded on the cameras that were installed in the lab. The records of both training and evaluation scenarios were viewed and evaluated remotely by teachers. The standardized checklists were used for evaluation, which were the same as using in training class. The evaluation and feedback of the teacher was provided by email. For the final evaluation of both groups, intubation procedures were performed on real patients in the operation theater under the direct supervision of the clinical teacher anesthesiologist. To ensure the patient's safety, each procedure step was monitored and, if necessary, immediately corrected by anesthesiologist. The sequence of endotracheal intubation procedure actions was assessed and compared between groups. We included 77 participants in final analysis, 34 in conventional group, 43 in hybrid group. Both conventional and hybrid groups did not differ significantly in respect of gender, age, the ratio of students and residents. All the actions were better performed in hybrid group than conventional control group. We found that overall average score of correctly performed intubation procedure steps were 36% higher in the hybrid group as compared to conventional learning group. In the hybrid group, the number of correct actions performed varied between 36 to 100% with mean of 91%, while in conventional group the average was 32%. The study demonstrates that a hybrid training methodology significantly improves practical skills performance of intubation as compared to conventional simulation-based learning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Aida. It was very interesting, and what we see that it is an increasingly popular pedagogical approach in the real life situation experience. And what is your opinion? Is it students or clinicians when they go for this hybrid learning? How can you increase this real life situation? Maybe you have some ideas, not them to feel like not the real patient. How to stimulate this feeling?
There are a lot of methods how to do it, but our aim somehow to show the real life situations and stressful conditions and how the students and learners to manage with them. So our aim that all learning methods somehow works on critical conditions.
Thank you very much. And it's also the patient's safety, the first of what we can see that all this training of course, is based on the patient safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, please welcome Liuda Brogienė from Lithuanian University of Health Science, and she will represent the predictive factors for assess side pain chronically after percutaneous coronary intervention via radial artery access. So please, Liuda, we would like to hear.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. So my name is Liuda Brogienė. I'm a PhD student at Lithuanian University of Health and Science. And I want to thank organizers for the opportunity to present our research findings. So ischemic heart disease is one of the leading and life-threatening disease in the world. And PCA is the gold standard diagnostic and treatment providing tool for this condition. There is a couple approaches. It's transradial approach and transfemoral approach. And it is known now that the transradial approach reduces life-threatening complications compared with transfemoral approach, risks, mortality, hospitality stay. And it's the, again, gold standard of choice to do this procedure through the radial access. But again, it is known that post-procedural pain can occur after any procedure that cause actual or potential damage. And numbers of clinical cases describing debilitating pain syndromes after PCA via transradial approach are growing. And on the left side, you can see the picture from our clinical case that the patient after PCA procedure suffered from complex regional syndrome, which is really hard to treat. The development of chronic access site pain after PCA, it's not described in literature yet, but it's known that this condition can disturb the patient's everyday life and reduce ability to work, and it is, again, hard to treat. So we hypothesize that there is a peri-procedural predictors which can reveal the transition from acute to chronic pain state after PCA, and the aim of this study was to assess the prevalence, predictive factors for developing chronic access site pain after percutaneous coronary intervention, in other words, PCA, via radial artery access. This is a prospective observational study. The data of patients who underwent elective non-emergency PCA procedure using transradial access at the Department of Cardiology, Hospital of Lithuanian University of Health and Science were collected and analyzed. And the following factors we analyzed was demographic, so it's like patient age, gender, body mass, and others. Then comorbid conditions as diabetes, arterial hypertension, dyslipidemia, depression, and other conditions, and of course peri-procedural factors such as complications, pain intensity, and prevalence. To evaluate pain intensity, we used verbal analog scale, and on your right side you can see study flowchart. So in the final, our final sample was 161, and in total we lost 49 patients. Missing data points were not inputted. So our results in the table on the right, you can see the clinical and procedural characteristics of patients. All patients had a history of ischemic heart disease with a mean of 10 years. And the main complications was hematoma and arterial bleeding. And the figure on the left shows the pain transition from acute state to chronic one. And as you see, despite that the pain prevalence was decreasing during the follow-up period, still we observed 3.7% of patients who had pain after 3 months. So, and we know that if the patient suffers more than 3 months, we can say that it's persistent or even chronic pain condition. Pain intensity during the acute period was moderate, and after 3 months, it was mild moderate. The regime of pain treatment was as needed. That means that medication was prescribed by the attending physician when the patient complained about access site pain, and it was prescribed only for 24% of all patients. Mainly was used ketoprofen as non-steroid medication, and in several cases, a strong opioid as morphine was used. So in order to see if the presence of pain across different follow-up points has predictive potential for pain persistence in the future, we calculated correlation matrix. The results show that during the whole period under study, pain intensity correlation across different time points were medium, so that it's 0.32 and higher. The chronic pain mostly strongly correlated with the pain intensity at 24 hours after procedure, and which is 0.47. To analyze the potential predictors, as I told before, for access site pain chronicity, we induced such factors as demographic profile, comorbidities, procedure-related indicators, and of course, acute pain characteristics. Here you can see 3 factors significantly predicting the pain chronicity. So it is they are access site hand neuropathy, hematoma, and diabetes as a comorbidity. And most interestingly, our finding revealed that the strongest and most consistent predictor of chronic pain development was acute pain after PCA procedure, starting from pain immediately after procedure, after PCA, to 48 hours following it. And the acute pain intensity was also consistent predictor for development of pain chronicity. So we can say that pain can predict actually pain. Our conclusion is that the prevalence of chronic access site pain is after PCA is 3.7%. And main predictive factors for access site pain chronicity are diabetes, hematoma formation at access site, persistent pain and intensity during 48 hours period after this particular procedure. So thank you very much for your attention. And maybe there is some questions.
Thank you, Luda. It was really very useful to hear that the pain predict pain. It's very important and factor. And my question, we don't have any questions from the audience of participants, but I would like just to ask one question. Maybe it's not direct from your presentation, what you said, but about what you think, what is the nurse role in assessing these predictive factors on this team-based patient care?
Actually, it's a huge role, but first of all, still we need to educate our nurses how to take care of the patients with this particular pain, procedure-related pain. So we need to have some guidelines, and we will set that. So the role of the nurses is very huge because they are near the patient. They are first who will be called to during some conditions as pain or other complications. So I think the role is very important.
Thank you. It's good to hear that the team, it's very important for the patient safety, the quality of the care. And this study shows that to be next to the patient, to assess the pain and to stop the pain in the future, it's very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now we have our the last presenter, Donata. Welcome. And Donata Vaičiulytė is from the Lithuanian University of the Health Science. And her topic is the risk factors associated with the increased risk of deep sternal wound infections in patients after the coronary artery bypass, grafting and heart defector surgery. So please, Donata, we would like to hear your findings.
So, hello everyone. As I was introduced, my name is Donata. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to present our study about the risk factors that are associated with an increased risk of deep sternal wound infections in patients after coronary artery bypass grafting and heart defect surgery. So to begin with, despite the improvements over time with regard to morbidity, mortality, and long-term survival, deep sternal wound infection continues to be a major complication after an open heart surgery. Early diagnosis, identification of risk factors, and aggressive treatment could reduce mortality after cardiac surgery. The aim of our study was to identify the risk factors for postoperative development of deep sternal wound infection in patients after coronary artery bypass grafting and heart defect surgery at the Department of Thoracic, Cardiac, and Vascular Surgery of the Hospital of Lithuanian University of Health Sciences. This retrospective study analyzed 201 patients who underwent coronary artery bypass grafting or heart defect surgery between January and December in 2017 in the Department of Thoracic, Cardiac, and Vascular Surgery. In order to identify the risk factors that are associated with the increased risk of deep sternal wound infection, we collected this data. So the preoperative data included sex, age, body mass index, type of surgery, and blood test results. Intraoperative data included duration of surgery, duration of cardiopulmonary bypass, the need of vasopressors, inotropes, and other data. And postoperative data included duration of mechanical ventilation, antibiotic use, the need for dialysis, diuretics, and other data as well. So 201 patients who underwent coronary artery bypass grafting and heart defect surgery were allocated into two groups. The case group that included patients who had to be reoperated because of the deep sternal wound infection, and the control group, which consisted of the patients that we selected randomly. For descriptive statistics, we use means, median values, ranges, standard deviations, and 95% confidence intervals were appropriate. Categorical data were analyzed using the chi-square or Fisher's exact test. Students' t-test and Mann-Whitney were used to compare numerical variables. Logistic regression model adjusting for age, gender were used to compare the risk of infection. A p-value of less than 0.05 was considered to be statistically significant. So the statistical analysis revealed that the case group had the significantly higher body mass index when compared with the control group. It was 32.65 versus 28.97. The levels of C-reactive protein and creatinine were also higher in the case group. Also, the patients of the case group, more of them had diabetes. It was 37% versus 20%. And cardiac operation and anamnesis or hemoglobin concentration didn't have a significant influence. The factors that were significantly longer in the case group were duration of surgery by 27 minutes, duration of cardiopulmonary bypass by 24 minutes, and aortic cross-clamp time by 12 minutes. And also, hemoglobin concentration during surgery was significantly lower in the case group when compared with the control group. And blood transfusion during operation was also performed more frequently in the case group when compared with the control group. And statistical analysis of postoperative data revealed that the inflammatory markers were significantly higher in the case group, and the usage of antibiotics was also longer when compared with the control group. 42% patients of the case group experienced delirium, contrary to 18% in the control group. Also, the patients of the case group had to stay in the intensive care unit for 1 day longer when compared with the control group. We decided to include variables into multivariate analysis, which we can identify and have an impact on while planning the surgery.
Multivariate analysis identified 3 variables as highly significant independent predictors for the development of deep sternal wound infection. Now, these variables were higher body mass index, longer duration of cardiopulmonary bypass, and anemia during surgery. In conclusion, higher body mass index, anemia, and duration of cardiopulmonary bypass are independent risk factors for the development of post-operative deep sternal wound infection. There can be several reasons for these results. It is thought that the dose of prophylactic antibiotics is not corrected for the body mass index of the patient, and the skin preparation can be more difficult. Additionally, fatty tissue does not contribute to wound healing. And one of the possible reasons for intraoperative anemia can be hemodilution because of the extracorporeal circuit, and intraoperative infusions for anesthesia management can contribute to hemodilution as well. Longer operation time or more complex surgery because of the patient's anatomy or hemorrhage can prolong the duration of cardiopulmonary bypass. With increased operative time, patients' open incisions are exposed to the environment longer, thus increasing the risk of bacterial contamination. And our practical recommendations are preoperative assessment to identify obese individuals as being at risk, and techniques to minimize duration of surgery and intraoperative blood loss may help reduce post-operative deep sternal wound infection. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Donata. It was very interesting to hear for me as a nurse. And I would like to ask, maybe you have such a plan, or how you would like to share these findings and recommendations with the other colleagues, other members of the team, to prevent and to avoid these wounds.
Well, we actually didn't talk about it, how to share, but I think it's a good idea to discuss it with other authors, how we could share our findings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We see if there is no questions from the audience. And the last presentation was from Donata Vaičiulytė, and now all of our topics are finished. It was a great pleasure, and it was very interesting to hear all the information from the genetics of the COVID, about what the impact of COVID-19 lockdown on the trauma patients, and all the other topics, how to prevent the injuries, how to highlight the patient safety, and about the importance of the team. So thank you very much for the attention, for being very patient, and we're looking forward to see next year. Thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon.